A blood-stained ball, a royal ball, instantly transformed into a graveyard of betrayal. The magnificent ballroom scene is shattered by gunfire, destroying the atmosphere of authority of the Varley family. Standing on the brink of life and death, Elena didn't blink as she faced the barrel of the gun of the man who had once sworn eternal love to her. Ironically, her only escape lies in the arms of Lucian, the ruthless man she once longed to flee from, the one who would rather burn the world down himself than let anyone hurt her. A heart-wrenching tragedy where love blossoms most brilliantly from within the very realm of death.
Case file, Elena Varelli. She moves through the suffocating heat of the party, a ghost in her own life. This is the classic flight instinct, born from a family so tightly woven it strangles. Tonight, the engagement party is the final stitch, a ritual to brand her as property. The tragedy isn't the escape from an enemy she can see, but from a cage built inside her own mind, a structure she was taught to call home. And at its center, Lucian. Her obsession with the family heir is a textbook trauma bond, a desperate clinging to the very man who is both her tormentor and her only perceived savior. The elevator waits, a metal box that will either be her coffin, returning her to this gilded hell, or a futile, desperate gasp for air. A tremor starts in her fingers, a secret rebellion she quiets by gripping her wine glass. This ballroom, filled with predators in $1,000 suits, is the only world she knows, the perfect garden for her particular strain of poison to grow. Her smile is a porcelain mask. Behind it, she is screaming. Then a voice, Adrian Cole. He leans in, his handsome, simple face a study in blissful ignorance. "Like you were made for this," he says, and the words are a brand. He's from a different world, a world without monsters, and therefore of no use to her. 6 months ago, she thought he might be a key, a profound, predictable miscalculation. She offers a shield of words. "I've been busy." But Adrian pushes, blind to the invisible walls she lives behind. "We need to talk about us, Elena." Her reply is sharp, a clean break. "There is no us, Adrian." He sees only fear in her eyes, the simple fear of a simple girl, a projection of his own harmless world onto her tragedy. "You made it clear you were scared." He has no concept of what there is to be afraid of. He reaches for her, and she recoils as if struck, a reflex honed by years of living on a razor's edge. He speaks of a gilded cage, a diagnosis so naive it's almost insulting, and offers himself as the key. Frustration chokes her. The cage is not the horror, the keeper is. Her gaze drifts across the room, pulled by a force she cannot fight, to him. Lucian. Surrounded by his men, he is the anchor of her terror and the harbor of her safety. A perfect, beautiful contradiction that will be the death of her. Lucian Varelli, cousin, heir, for 5 long years, the architect of her every waking thought. He moves with the latent promise of violence, a man who owns every room he enters. Her love for him, unrequited for 5 agonizing years, is a masterclass in psychological erosion. He treats her like a duty, a box to be checked, and with every cold glance, he unknowingly twists the knife, tightening the bond between them. Adrian's voice is a distant hum. She turns back to him, her voice suddenly devoid of all warmth. "We are done." She is clearing the board, preparing for the only opponent who matters. Is there someone else? The question is a scalpel aimed directly at her core wound. Her face becomes a placid mask, her denial a perfectly rehearsed lie. It's a reflex, a desperate move to protect the sacred, twisted thing she feels for Lucian. But the rejection sharpens Adrian's senses. The handsome veneer cracks, revealing something harder underneath. "You're lying," he says, his voice low, pressing down on her. "I know when you're hiding something." Then, a hand on the small of her back. She doesn't need to look. Every cell in her body knows his touch. It's not comfort. It is ownership. Lucian's voice cuts through the air, a low challenge to Adrian that is purely territorial. A king defending his property. Adrian's posture crumbles into deference, acknowledging the alpha, and in his eyes a flicker of comprehension. He looks from Lucian's possessive hand to Elena's frozen face. His jaw tightens. The terrible truth begins to dawn on him. Adrian plays his last card, the one he thinks will save her. The arranged marriage, a chess move by a narcissistic king using his daughter as a pawn. There is no engagement. Elena snaps, the words tearing from her throat in a ragged cry of rebellion. The two men turn to her in unison, her outburst a shocking violation of the family code. Lucian's hand tightens on her back, a silent, crushing command. Your father said, Adrian starts, but Lucian's voice stops him cold. A single word, a final warning. Elena, don't! She turns on him. A seismic shift from a lifetime of obedience. He is so close she can feel the heat of him. A proximity that has always been both devastating and divine. Don't what? She challenges, her voice trembling with a terrifying new strength. Don't contradict my father. Don't have a single thought about my own life. His eyes are chips of ice. His reply is the absolute law of their world. Everything in this family is my decision. The words strike her, and something inside her finally shatters. The crack runs through her, a psychic fissure tearing through years of practiced compliance. She slams her empty glass onto a tray, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the ballroom. Every head turns. It's a flagrant spectacle of distress, a public rejection of their sacred united front. Lucian leans in, his voice a silken threat. Walk away right now, and I promise you will regret it. She looks him in the eye, the wreckage of her heart on full display. I already regret plenty. And then she runs. She doesn't get far. Adrian grabs her arm, his grip a vice, ironically mirroring the very control she is trying to escape. He is still playing the rescuer, still misreading every line of this tragedy. Let go. The command is iron, but he ignores it. His grip tightens, his own frustration twisting his handsome face into something darker, something she has never seen before. He leans close, his voice a raw whisper, and delivers the fatal diagnosis. You're in love with him. It is not a question. It is an accusation. The world freezes. What? She breathes, but it's a useless denial. Adrian lists the symptoms like a coroner reading a report. Her constant awareness of Lucian, the tension in her body when he's near, the way she submits to his possessive touch. Every word is a nail in her coffin. He doesn't own me, she cries, the denial of a true addict. Adrian's final words are brutal, a mirror held up to the ugliest part of her soul. From where I'm standing, it looks like you'd let him do anything he wanted. She turns and flees, but the truth chases her down the hall. Adrian moves into her orbit, a violation of the unspoken space between them that sparks, for the very first time, a genuine coil of fear in her gut. Did you really think you could just walk away from me? After I spent months taking you apart, piece by piece, becoming the very thing you needed? I never asked for that. You didn't have to. I saw you suffering, saw you trapped in this gilded cage with wolves at your heels. I was trying to save you. I don't need saving. You do. You just don't know it yet. The entire landscape of his face shifts then. Something cold and calculating flickers deep in his eyes. And if you won't let me save you my way, well, I suppose I'll have to find another. The threat hangs in the air, absolute and sharp. Elena's heart begins to hammer against her ribs. Adrian, you're making a terrible mistake. Lucian Varelli will never love you. He can't love anyone. He will use you, he will break you, and when he's bored, he will throw you away like he does everyone else. That isn't your concern. It's my concern because I care about you. You don't care about me, she shoots back, her voice suddenly frigid. You care about the idea of me, the little lost girl you could pluck from the monster's den. But I'm no damsel, Adrian, and this isn't a fairy tale. A muscle jumps in his jaw, a single violent twitch. You're going to regret this. Maybe, she allows, but that regret will be mine and mine alone. She turns and walks away, the frantic beat of her own heart a drum in her ears. She can feel his stare on her back, the energy shifting from desperation to something far more malignant. She doesn't dare look back. She had to get out. Not now. Not like this. She hits the elevator button at the end of the hall, striking it again and again. The doors slide open, a small mercy, and she stumbles inside. Only then does the shaking start, a violent tremor rattling through her entire body. The plan was so simple. Get to the room, grab the bag, disappear. There was money saved, a car parked 3 blocks away, a contact waiting to drive her across state lines before anyone even knew she was gone. She'd been planning it for weeks. Tonight was supposed to be the night. While they were all drunk and distracted, she'd be miles away. Just get to the garage, just get to the car. And the elevator doors begin to slide shut. But a hand caught them, arresting the gesture. The doors slid open again, and Elena's heart seized. It was him, Lucian. His face was a mask of cold emptiness, impossible to read. Going somewhere? Her mind raced. My room, I have a headache. It was a pathetic lie. He stepped inside, and the doors whispered shut, sealing them in the small space. The air grew heavy, thick, unbreathable. Elena flattened herself against the back of the car, a useless gesture to find space where there was none. Lucian's arm brushed hers as he reached past, his fingers finding the emergency stop. A violent jerk, and the elevator was dead in the shaft. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "I'm stopping you from making the single greatest mistake of your life." "You don't get to make that decision for me. I do when it concerns this family." "I am not your family," she shot back. "Not in any way that matters. I'm just the orphan your uncle took in when my parents died. A charity case with a convenient last name." For a fleeting moment, something shifted behind his eyes. Maybe it was rage, or some sharp, brutal cousin to pain. "Is that what you truly believe?" "It is what I live." "Then you are even more lost than I thought." The jab landed, but she refused to show it. "Let me go, Lucian." "No, that wasn't a request." "Neither is this." He moved toward her, and the cold of the metal wall bit into her back. "You want to run? Fine. But you will look me in the eye and tell me why. I don't owe you an explanation." "You owe this family the very air you breathe." "I owe this family nothing," she cried, her voice cracking with the strain. "I never asked to be brought into this world of yours. I never wanted any of it, and I am done pretending that I do." "So you just walk out tonight during a party thrown in your honor?" It is not in my honor. It's a business deal. I'm being handed over to Marco Romano like property, and everyone is smiling as if it's a wedding. You are not being sold. No, aren't I? What do you call it when my own father barters my engagement to a man I've never even had a real conversation with? Lucian's jaw went rigid. It is a political alliance. It is my life. Your life belongs to this family. And that is the sickness right there, she said, her voice finally breaking. I don't have a life. I have a purpose, and I am through. For a long, suffocating moment, they just stared at each other. Elena could see the raw tension coiled in his shoulders, the way his hands were balled into white-knuckled fists. He was furious. Good. His fury was better than the frozen indifference she usually got. Where were you going to go? He finally asked. Anywhere, everywhere. It doesn't matter where. It matters to me. Why? So you can drag me back? Lock me away until the wedding? So I can know that you're safe. A sound, half laugh, half sob tore from her throat. Safe from what? The only person I've ever needed protection from is you. His composure finally cracked. Me? Yes, you. The words spilled out of her, a flood of feeling held back for years, of longing, of quiet, desperate agony. Do you have any idea what it's like? To be near you every single day, to watch you handle me as if I'm made of glass? A project you have to manage and protect and always, always keep at arm's length? Elena. I am not a little girl, Lucian. I haven't been for a very long time. But you still see that scared 18-year-old who showed up on your doorstep. You keep me out of the business. You keep me out of everything that matters. And now you think you can stand here and physically stop me from leaving? I have every right, he said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble, because it is my duty to protect you. I am not yours. I don't belong to anyone. You're wrong. He moved with a predator's speed she couldn't react to, closing the distance between them in 2 silent strides. His hands came up not to strike, but to frame her face, forcing her gaze to lock with his. For one heart-stopping second, she thought he would kiss her. He didn't. He just held her there, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones, his storm gray eyes boring into hers with an intensity that burned. You want to know why I keep my distance? His voice was raw, his famous control shattered. Because if I ever let you get close, I would destroy you. I would take every good and pure thing inside of you and twist it into something as dark and broken as I am. And I have been trying. God, Elena, I have been trying so hard not to do that. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a wild drumbeat drowning out all thought. What are you saying? I'm saying you're right. You're not a child. You haven't been for years. And I've known. I have known it every single day, and it has been nothing short of torture. Lucian. Do you understand what that's like? To watch you become this incredible, powerful woman and know that I can never touch you, that I can never have you, that I have to stand by while fools like Cole try to. He cut himself off, a muscle working in his jaw. You think I don't see you? You think I don't know? Her breath hitched. Know what? That you love me. The world tilted on its axis. Elena tried to pull back, but his grip was firm. Don't lie. Not now. Not about this. His hold softened, but his eyes never wavered. I've known for a year, maybe more, and I've pretended I didn't, because to admit it would be to admit how I feel. And I can't. His voice cracked on the last word. I cannot let myself feel that for you. Why not? Because I'm poison, Elena. Everything I touch turns to rot because you deserve so much more than a man with more blood on his hands than he can count. A man who would burn this city to the ground just to keep you safe. Tears started to burn her eyes. You don't get to decide what I deserve. Someone has to. You won't. So what's the alternative? The words felt like choking. You just push me away forever? Watch me marry some other man? We just pretend this isn't real? His face was a study in pure torment. Yes. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, princess. Welcome to the real world. The nickname was a physical blow. He'd said it to her once, years ago, after some stupid complaint. She hated it then, and she hated it now. Let me go, she whispered. Lucian, please. The elevator lurched, thrown by a force from outside. A deep boom echoed up the shaft. The lights flickered, died, then flared back to life. They both froze. What was that? Elena breathed. In a single instant, Lucian changed. The tormented man was gone. And in his place stood the cold, calculating killer she knew. A gun was suddenly in his hand, pulled from the inside of his jacket. She hadn't even seen him reach for it. He shifted his body, putting himself squarely between her and the doors. Stay behind me, he ordered. What's happening? I don't know, but it's not good. A second blast, this one closer, shook the car so hard she stumbled. With his free hand, Lucian pulled out his phone, already dialing. Marco, status. A beat of silence. Understood. Get them to the panic room, now. He ended the call, his eyes finding hers in the dim light. We have to go. Go where? We're in a metal box. He holstered the gun and reached up, his fingers prying open the ceiling panel. With a surge of raw, brutal strength, he pulled himself up and through the opening into the darkness of the shaft. He looked down at her from above, his hand outstretched. Come on. A question, obvious even to her, formed on her lips. You want me to climb out into the elevator shaft? His reply was cold and tactical. Unless you'd rather stay here and meet whoever set off those bombs, yes. She took his hand. The ease with which he hauled her up was a terrifying reminder of the physical power he possessed. Now they were standing on top of the car, a dark, vertical abyss dropping away beneath them. The detail of her heels felt suddenly, fatally absurd. Don't look down, Lucian commanded. Wasn't planning on it. He found the service ladder, bolted to the wall, yanking it to test its strength. It's solid. Climb. Go straight up behind me and don't stop until you hit the top. The ascent began. Her muscles screamed in protest, and she felt the fine silk of her dress snag and tear. Then they heard it, shouts from far below, followed by the unmistakable chatter of automatic weapons. This wasn't some warning. This was a full-scale assault on the mansion happening during a party filled with every major crime figure in the city. It was either the boldest move in history or the stupidest. At the top of the shaft, Lucian forced open a service door, pulling them into a dusty maintenance hall. He drew his weapon again, immediately moving. Where are we going? She asked, her breathing ragged. Control room, we need eyes. He led her down a web of service corridors she never knew existed. He moved through the estate's veins with the chilling certainty of one who had mapped them in his own mind. They bled out into a small, sterile chamber, a heart of security monitors where 3 men stood armed, their faces cast in grim relief. At Lucian's arrival, they straightened, a ripple of deference. "Report," he commanded, his voice a flat line. "The East Wing is gone," an operative said. "We're counting 20, maybe more." They came in through the service entrance. Military-grade gear. Professional hardware. We don't have a body count. Most of the guests are in lockdown, but we've got reports of others pinned down. Who are they? No faces, no flags, they're ghosts. The monitor feeds washed over Lucian's face, a flicker of chaos that found no purchase in his expression. He processed the data, dissecting the attack with the cool detachment of a god watching a battle of ants. This was his nature, clinical, analytical, a pathological need for control. And then, a fracture. His gaze locked onto a single screen, a hairline crack in his emotional armor. Camera 12, isolate it. The technician's fingers flew. The image resolved into the ghost of a ballroom, a graveyard of crystalline silk. And at its heart, Adrian. Elena breathed. The name was a phantom in the room, her former love now directing the uniformed monsters. As they watched, he signaled, and 2 more figures emerged from the smoke, dragging a man between them. A tremor ran through Elena. "That's my father!" A muscle in Lucian's jaw jumped, a single violent twitch, the only outward sign of the tectonic plates shifting within him. "Get me Marco. Tell him we have a compromised asset." "Doing it!" On the screen, Adrian spoke to the captive, but the sound was irrelevant. The father's terror was a silent scream that filled the room. "He was feeding them information," Lucian stated, his voice sinking to a lethal depth. "It explains the breach. Why now? Why this way?" "It makes no sense," Elena countered, her mind refusing to connect the dots. "Adrian has nothing to do with this." Lucian finally turned his gaze from the screen to her. "He's been with you for months, Elena, worming his way into the family. And tonight, you ended it." The realization hit her like a physical blow, a sudden, brutal restructuring of her world. "This is my fault. No, this is what he is. But I'm the one who—" "Stop!" Lucian turned, his whole body a study in contained violence. "Do not let him make you carry the weight of his sins. This was set in motion long before tonight." In that instant, a second blast ripped through the air, closer this time, a giant's fist pounding on the oar. The world plunged into absolute darkness, then flickered back to life under the cold red glow of emergency power. "We have to move," a guard urged. "They're coming for the control room." Lucian nodded once. "Elena, you go to the safe room with—" "No." The word was small, but it stopped him cold. "This is not a discussion." "You're right. I'm not hiding while my family is being taken apart piece by piece. If they take you, they already have my father. If Adrian is working with them, he knows exactly what I'm worth." She met his eyes, a direct challenge. "I can be useful. You don't have the training. I'm not stupid, and I know how Adrian thinks better than anyone in this room. I can see his next move." Lucian watched her for a long, ticking moment, the cold calculus of risk versus reward playing out behind his eyes. A curse escaped his lips, low and bitter. "You do not leave my side. Not for a second. If I say run, you run. Is that understood?" "Understood." He pulled a heavy firearm from a weapons locker and pressed it into her hands. "Do you know how to use this?" "I might just surprise you." For the briefest of moments, a flicker of something, approval perhaps, crossed his face. "Move." They became a single entity, a four-headed creature flowing through the service corridors. Elena felt the frantic drummer in her chest, a wild, panicked rhythm, yet her hands on the weapon were perfectly still. A hidden history of training, a psychological bulwark built for a day she prayed would never come. At a junction of cold concrete, Lucian's fist went up. A halt. The scrape of a boot on the floor ahead. The soft click of a weapons safety being disengaged. He gave silent orders, a language of hands and eyes. Two men peeled off, melting into the shadows to flank, while Lucian and the other guard stayed, bracketing Elena. The violence was a sudden, brutal punctuation. 3 sharp cracks echoed, 2 bodies fell, and the silence that rushed back in was deeper, heavier than before. "Clear," a voice whispered from the darkness. They moved on. The halls once so familiar to Elena were now an alien landscape from a waking nightmare. They passed the fallen. Some were men she knew, some were not. Each body was another weight on her soul. This was the world she had tried so desperately to pretend didn't exist. They reached the entrance to the safe room, a reinforced steel door hidden behind a false wall of leather-bound books. Lucian's fingers danced over a keypad. The wall slid open, revealing not a sanctuary, but a cage of controlled panic, a room built for 20 souls, now holding twice that number. A man stood at the center of the storm. Marco Varelli, her father's most trusted enforcer, Lucian's second. The hard lines of his face softened with relief when he saw them. "Thank God, we lost everything." "They're jamming communications. This is a professional hit." Marco's eyes landed on Elena. "She shouldn't be here. She's a liability." "Her presence was not a request," Lucian said, his voice utterly flat. Marco's response was a bitter acceptance of fate. "Of course, she is a Varelli." He gestured to his own bank of monitors. "We've got them bottled up in the East Wing, but they're dug in, and they have Dominic." The confirmation of her father's capture landed like a punch, but Elena's face remained a perfect, still mask. "How many?" 30, maybe more. "They're playing games, shifting positions to make their numbers look bigger." "Smart," Lucian muttered. "Who's their field commander?" "Your boyfriend." Elena winced as if struck. Lucian's face became a sheet of ice. "He is not my boyfriend, and I know. We saw Adrian Cole on the feeds." Marco shook his head. "I never liked that kid. Too perfect, too hungry." "He's not alone," Lucian observed. "This is too sophisticated for him. Who wins if we lose tonight?" "The list is long. The Romanos, the Castiglianos, the syndicates in New York. Hell, it could be someone in our own house. We're never more vulnerable than when we're celebrating." "No." Elena stepped forward, her mind a whirlwind of terrible clarity. "It's not about vulnerability, it's about the audience." The 2 men turned to look at her. "Think about it," she pressed on. "Every important family is in this house tonight. If something happens, if my father is killed, if Lucian is killed, it happens in front of everyone. There's no way to hide it, no way to spin the story. Whoever did this, they want a public execution." Lucian's eyes narrowed. "A demonstration." "Or a revolution," Marco added grimly. "You cut off the head of the snake in front of the whole world, create a vacuum, and then you step in to fill it." "So who fills it?" Elena asked. "Who gains the most?" The answer fell into place in 3 minds at once. A single horrifying conclusion. "Romano," Lucian said, the name a curse. Marco spat on the floor. "The engagement announcement. It was supposed to be tonight. If something happens to Dominic before that's made official, Marco Romano becomes the heir by default, Elena finished, the words tasting like ash. As my fiancé, his claim on the family assets would look legitimate. The son of a bitch. Lucian's voice was now pure venom. The entire engagement. It wasn't an alliance. It was the prelude to a hostile takeover. And Adrian, Elena's voice was a whisper, a tool, a psychologically broken toy they could point, fire, and then discard. Lucian turned to Marco, his eyes burning. Where is Romano now? In this room. He's been here the entire time. The order was ice. Bring him to me. Marco hesitated for a fraction of a second, the sheer audacity of the accusation warring with his loyalty. Then he moved. He waded through the terrified crowd and emerged with a man in his 60s, Marco Romano Sr. The man wore a face of paternal warmth, a grandfatherly mask sculpted from pure deceit. He approached, his expression a perfect pantomime of concern. Lucian, my boy, thank God, this is a nightmare. Who on earth could— The play was over. Stop. Lucian's weapon came up, leveled at Romano's chest. It was you. The quiet hum of the room vanished. Every sound ceased. Romano's mask of concern dissolved, revealing something colder underneath. That is a very serious thing to say. It is a fact. You orchestrated this entire tragedy to fracture the family, to seize the throne, the engagement. It was nothing but a beautiful, calculated lie. Romano's reply was devoid of heat. You have no proof. I have enough. Lucian's hand swept toward the monitors, their coal light painting his face. Your men are sloppy. Their formation is a ghost of the one you used in the Castano affair. Same points of entry, same rotation. The faces are new, but the signature, Romano, is yours. A muscle tightened in Romano's jaw. Even if that phantom theory were true, what would you do? Not here. Not with this audience. To kill me now would only prove their story, that you're unstable, that the family needs a new king. His reasoning is flawless. Elena's voice cut through the tension, sharp and clear. Two predators turned their heads as one. His death changes nothing. I need my father back. This has to end without more blood, and it must end with Romano's treason exposed and Lucian not looking like a tyrant. I am a tyrant, Lucian stated, a simple fact. Yes, she agreed, but you are the tyrant we chose. There's a difference. Her eyes locked back on Romano. You want to negotiate? Then let's negotiate. Romano's entire posture shifted, the aggressor dissolving into the cold strategist. What are you proposing? An exchange, she said. Me for my father. No. Lucian's response was a visceral reflex. She paid him no mind. Adrian's obsession is me. It's why he's here, why he allied with you. His attack was never a random act of war. I ended things with him hours ago. This is the desperate act of a man trying to rewrite the ending. So give him what he wants. Give him me. Elena, Lucian started. In exchange, she continued, you pull your men. No questions, no vengeance. You just walk away. The official story is an outside attack, and everyone goes home. Romano watched her, a flicker of genuine, clinical curiosity in his eyes. And why, precisely, would I agree to these terms? Mike, and because the alternative is Lucian killing you where you stand, consequences be damned. He won't. Too many eyes. Are you sure of that? The question hung in the air, heavy and absolute. It seems to me you have fundamentally misjudged how far he will go to protect this family and to protect me. Romano's gaze shifted to Lucian, and in it was a flicker of reassessment, of something that looked very much like fear. He searched Lucian's face and found only the calm promise of a grave, and he made his choice. 1 hour, Romano clipped out. I'll set up the trade. You break the terms, even slightly, the deal is dead. Elena met his gaze. You have my word, the word of a Varelli. A dry, bitter laugh escaped Romano's lips. That and $5 might get me a cup of coffee. He pulled out his phone, dialing. Elena couldn't hear the words, only watched the subtle dance of muscles in his jaw. The call ended. A sharp nod. They agree. Main ballroom, 30 minutes. Lucian moved, breaking the space between them. I'm going with her. No. She comes alone, or the deal evaporates. Unacceptable. Then we are at an impasse, Romano said, sliding the phone into his pocket. It's your choice, Varelli, your pride, or her father's life. The very air in the room seemed to crackle, thick with the weight of the man's silent internal war. The battle was written in the hard lines of his face. Finally, his eyes found hers. Do you trust me? He asked, his voice a low vibration meant only for her, an impossible question. Completely, she answered. Then trust me now. He gave a slight nod to Marco. Get the vest. Marco vanished and returned with a thin, concealable plate carrier. Elena shed her jacket, ignoring the eyes on her as they strapped it into place. The weight was immediate, a heavy hand pressing against her ribs. It won't stop a rifle round, Lucian warned, but it buys you a chance. And listen to me, you're not going in there alone. What are you planning? Something profoundly irrational. He framed her face with his hands, a gesture of ownership disguised as intimacy. I need you to believe, truly believe, that I will not let him harm you. Can you do that? Elena looked into his gray eyes and saw the truth of it. This wasn't love, not the kind from stories, but something adjacent. Something primal, a fierce, possessive thing that was aimed squarely at her. Yes, she breathed. He leaned forward, their foreheads touching. Go to the ballroom and stall. Argue the terms, make new demands, anything to buy us time when you hear the signal. What signal? You'll know it. The second you do, you drop. No thinking, no hesitation, just get on the floor and cover your head. Lucian, promise me. I promise. He pulled back, and the fragile moment of connection shattered. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by the cold veneer of command as he turned, already moving. Marco, get the team in position. I want rifles covering every angle, and I want them to be ghosts. Romano's men are good, but they're not perfect. They'll have a blind spot. Marco's smile was pure predator. What do you need me to miss? Everything. 20 minutes later, Elena stood before the ballroom doors. Her hands did not tremble. Her breathing was even. The vest was a solid, leaden weight, a constant reminder of what waited. The doors swung open. Inside was a portrait of ruin. Tables lay splintered, a sea of broken glass crunched underfoot, and the ornate walls were scarred with bullet holes. And in the center of it all stood Adrian, a gun pressed to her father's temple. Dominic Varelli looked broken, a decade older than she remembered. A thin line of blood tracked down from a cut over his eye. His hands were bound, but his eyes, locked on hers, burned with a furious, helpless light. "Elena, don't you dare come in here," he roared. "Silence!" Adrian barked, his focus on her. "I knew you would come." Elena walked forward, the sound of her heels grinding glass echoing in the dead space. "Let him go, Adrian." "Not yet. First we're going to talk." "We have nothing to talk about." "Oh, we have everything to talk about." He waved the gun, and her father flinched. "Did you think you could just throw me away after all this?" "I already have." "Because of him?" Adrian's face twisted into a mask of contempt. "Lucian Varelli, the perfect, untouchable prince. Do you think he gives a damn about you? That he would choose you over his precious family for a single second? This isn't about Lucian." "Everything is about Lucian." Adrian's voice cracked, rising into a hysterical shriek. "I was trying to save you from this life. I gave you a way out. But you chose to stay in this gilded cage, chasing a man who sees you as property." "He does not." "He does. They all do. You're just another piece on the board to them, another asset to be leveraged. But I saw you, the real you, someone who deserved to be free." Elena took another slow, deliberate step. "If you ever really saw me, you'd know I don't need saving." "Then what do you need?" "The right to make my own choices," she said, her voice steady. "The right to be wrong. The right to burn down my own life if I choose to." Adrian stared, a long, hollow moment stretching between them. Then the gun lowered from her father's head and came to rest, pointing directly at her chest. Wrong answer. And then everything happened at once. A high, piercing whistle sliced through the air. Elena dropped. It wasn't a choice. It was a reflex, her body hitting the floor before her mind could catch up. Gunfire erupted from 3 unseen positions. Adrian's men collapsed. Her father was yanked violently behind an overturned table. Elena lay still, her cheek pressed to the cold, glass-strewn marble as bullets whispered over her head. Then hands were on her, brutal, panicked, hauling her backward. She twisted, looking up into Adrian's face, contorted with a feral rage. He had reached her first. "You lying bitch!" he snarled, dragging her toward a side door. "You set me up!" She slammed an elbow back into his ribs. He grunted, but his grip was iron, the barrel of his gun now jammed hard against her temple. "Let her go, Adrian!" Lucian's voice, colder than ice. Adrian spun, wrenching Elena around to use as a shield. "Not a chance. She's mine." "She was never yours to own." "And she's yours? Is that what this is? The great Lucian Varelli admitting he actually wants something for himself." "I'm admitting that I will end your life if you don't take your hands off her in the next 3 seconds." Big words for a man who's outgunned. "Look around you, Adrian. Your men are dead. Romano's men are gone. You're utterly alone." Elena could feel the frantic, rabbit-fast beat of his heart against her back. She could feel the tremor in the hand that held the gun. Panic. It was rolling off him in waves, making him infinitely more dangerous. "You know what?" Adrian's voice dropped, suddenly flat and dead. "If I can't have her, then nobody can." His finger tightened on the trigger. There was no time to think. Elena moved, a violent twist she'd practiced in secret 100 times. For a fraction of a heartbeat, Adrian's grip loosened. The gun went off. A blinding, white-hot explosion detonated in her shoulder. She was falling, the world dissolving into a gray blur. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard more shots. She heard Adrian scream, a sound cut short. She heard Lucian calling her name. Then hands were on her, gentle this time, cupping her face. Elena, Elena, look at me! She forced her eyes open. Lucian's face was there, inches from hers. He was pale, a stark, profound terror in his eyes she had never seen before. Vest! She gasped, the word tearing from her lungs. The vest. It hit high. Your shoulder. Can you move? She tried. A seizure rips through Elena's body, a violent, electric response to the trauma. Yet some part of her fights to remain tethered to the world. Yes. Good. That's good. Stay with me, okay? Just stay with me. She feels the desperate need to hold on, a war waged in the trenches of her own mind. But the darkness beckons, a sweet, tempting oblivion that promises to end the pain, and it is winning. The last thing her eyes register is his face, Lucien. The last thing she hears is his voice, shredded with an agony that mirrors her own, speaking her name like it's the only prayer he knows. When she surfaces, it's to a world of sterile white, the scent of antiseptic burning her nostrils. A simple attempt to move sends a white-hot spear of pain through her shoulder, tearing a gasp from her throat. Don't move! She turns her head, slow, so slow, and he's there. Lucien looks like he's been through a war, his vigil etched into every line on his face. His clothes are a rumpled mess, his hair a disaster, and the dark circles beneath his eyes look more like bruises carved from sleepless torment. How long? She whispers, the words scraping her raw throat. 18 hours. Bullet missed everything vital, but you lost a lot of blood. His eyes lock on hers, and it's like he's trying to hold her there with his gaze alone. You scared the hell out of me. Her first thought is for her father, the anchor of her world. Shaken, but he's fine. He's already been here 3 times. So has Marco. And Adrian. A curtain falls over Lucien's expression, a sudden, chilling void. Dead. He tried to take another shot at you after you were down. I didn't give him a second chance. The information lands without impact. There is no guilt, no sorrow, only a profound, silent wave of relief that the threat is finally gone. And Romano? He's being handled. Turns out a few other families took issue with his little ambition. He won't be a problem again. The family's whole, wounded but whole. We'll rebuild. She can see the weight he's carrying, the crushing burden of it all settling on his shoulders. You blame yourself. Of course I do. I let you walk into that room. I should have. Her voice cuts through his guilt, sharp and clear. You should have what? Locked me in a tower, treated me like a child. Her good arm finds his, her fingers wrapping around his wrist, a small point of contact in a world of chaos. You trusted me to make my own decision. That's the only thing I have ever wanted from you. He grips her hand back like a drowning man. Your decision almost got you killed. My decision saved my father. It saved the family. And it proved something I've been trying to show you for years. What's that? That I'm stronger than you think. He stares down at their joined hands, as if the sight is the only thing he can focus on. I know you are. I've always known. That's what scares me. Why? Because strong people don't need me. A beat of silence, The muscle in his jaw tightens. And I need to be needed. The confession, so raw and broken, unlocks something inside Elena. Lucien, you were right about everything. I've been keeping you at arm's length, handling you with care, because if I didn't... He finally looks at her, the walls he built around himself crumbling into dust. If I didn't, I'd have to admit what I've been running from for 5 years. And what is that? That I love you. That I have loved you since you turned 18 and called me an arrogant bastard for telling you what to wear to your first family dinner. That every single day since has been a special kind of hell. Watching you, knowing you were the one thing I could never have. The words hang in the sterile air between them. Tears finally spill over, tracking silent paths down Elena's cheeks. You're an idiot. He lets out a short, broken laugh. I know. All this time, I thought you couldn't see me, that I wasn't what you wanted. I have never stopped seeing you, never stopped wanting you. I just kept telling myself it was wrong. And now? Now you're lying in a hospital bed with my bullet in your shoulder because I failed you, because I let my feelings for you make me careless. Or, she counters, her voice soft but firm, I'm in this bed because I made a choice. A brave one, a stupid one maybe, but it was mine, and I would make it again. The declaration of her own will, her own power, hangs between them. He just stares at her. You're impossible. I'm a Varelli. We don't do easy. She throws his family's dark legacy back at him. A ghost of a smile touches his lips, but his eyes are a storm of warmth and danger, all of it aimed at her. No, you don't. He moves toward her slowly, giving her every chance to stop him. She doesn't. The first touch of his lips is hesitant, a question before it deepens into something desperate, a raw confession of 5 years of denial and longing. Elena kisses him back with everything she is, the pain in her shoulder and the stark white room dissolving into nothing. When they break apart, they are both breathless. I love you, she says, cementing the truth in the air. He presses his forehead to hers, a silent, desperate need for her to say it again. And she does, a litany against the silence. I'm not going anywhere. I'm done running. I'm staying. She is claiming more than just him. She is claiming her birthright, shattering the protected cage she's lived in. I'm learning the business. I'm taking my seat at the table, and I'm making my own damn calls. And you are going to let me. She sees the alarm flare in his eyes. That's not. But she cuts him off before the protest can form. Yes, it is. Because if you love me, you will trust me to be your partner, not your prize, standing right beside you. The war inside him is visible on his face. The protector conditioned to shield her versus the man who just saw her save them all. He lets out a long, defeated breath. This is gonna get messy. Everything good is messy, she replies. You could get hurt. So could you. That's the pact we're making. You're not backing down from this, are you? She challenges. Not a freaking chance. He watches her for a long moment. And then a smile breaks across his face. Something so rare and brilliant it almost hurts to look at. Okay. We do it your way, full partners, but I'm reserving the right to be a possessive, insane bastard about keeping you safe. A negotiation, she grants him that with a nod. And I'm teaching you everything, he vows. No more secrets, no more locked doors. You want in? You're all the way in. The promise of it feels like oxygen in her lungs. For real? For real, then he adds. You might regret it. This world of ours, it's not beautiful. I know, she says. I've seen it. I've lived inside it, and I'm still standing. He leans in and kisses her again, this one softer, a reverent seal on her words. Yes, yes, you are. The sudden crack of the door opening makes them spring apart like guilty teenagers. Her father, Dominic Varelli, stands in the doorway, his face a mask of stone. Dad, Elena starts. Lucienne. The patriarch's voice is flat, dead. Give us the room. Lucien nods, his hand brushing Elena's one last time before he leaves. The click of the latch is unnervingly loud. Dominic Varelli walks to the bed, each footstep a heavy, deliberate sound on the linoleum. How are you feeling? Sore, she says, but alive, thanks to Lucien. And a lot of other people, he replies, his tone subtly deflecting the credit. Her father sinks into the chair Lucien just left. I owe you an apology. The words seem to physically pain him. For what? For the engagement? For trying to draw a map for your life without asking for directions? For using my own daughter like a chess piece in my goddamn game? Under the harsh fluorescent lights, he looks old and utterly broken. I thought I was protecting you, keeping you from the fire. Instead, I only pushed you closer to the flame. You did what you believed was necessary, but that doesn't make it right. His touch is a ghost on her skin as his fingers find hers. Your mother would have my head for this. She always said you had her fire, her steel. I should have believed her. The name of the dead matriarch hangs in the air, a weapon of devastating psychological precision. A film of tears glosses the subject's eyes. I can hardly remember her. He says she was a supernova, brilliant, utterly without fear, a woman who never let the world tell her who to be. You are the echo of her. A faint, tragic smile touches his lips, which, if I'm being honest, is utterly terrifying. Dad, just let me. I've been blind, he cuts in, blind to who you are, what you're capable of, and his hand lifts, a broken gesture toward the empty space where Lucien just was, blind to what was happening right under my own roof. But I see now. My eyes are open. And if this is what you want, if he is who you want, then I won't be the one to stand in your way. And the business, the family will fall in line. They always do. As for the business, the warmth vanishes from his face, replaced by the cool geometry of calculation. I think it's time we began training the next generation. For real. No more gilded cage, no more safety in ignorance. A flicker of impossible hope illuminates her face. Are you serious? I am. We start tomorrow. After you've healed, you'll learn everything. The books, the connections, the operations, the whole bloody affair, and Lucien. The patriarch's voice turns to iron, a low and menacing thing. If he ever breaks your heart, I will kill him myself. Dad, I mean it. I don't care if he's kin. I don't care if he's next in line. You are my daughter. You come first, always. The raw, possessive protection is a physical ache inside her chest. I know, and I love you for it. But you don't have to worry about that. Lucien would die before he'd let anything happen to me. Let's pray that theory is never put to the test. He stands, presses a kiss to her forehead, and with an order to rest, he is gone. Alone, Elena is left with the echo of the last 24 hours. The room is a vacuum, filled only by the rhythmic pulse of machines and the distant hum of the city. Her eyes fix on the skyline, trying to map the new, violent trajectory of her life. The objective had been flight. an escape from the Varelli criminal machine. In a paradox of fate, her desperate sprint had landed her not outside the walls, but directly in the heart of its throne room. It was here she found her prize, not freedom from the darkness, but a partner willing to reign in it with her. A man who saw her savagery not as a flaw to be corrected, but as a trait to be revered. One whose devotion was so absolute it would allow her to become herself, even if that path led only deeper into the inferno. The door whispers open. Lucien returns, 2 steaming cups of hospital coffee in his hands. "Your father's blessing?" he asks, more like a death threat wrapped in a permission slip. He hands her a cup. "But I'll take it. So what now?" "Now," he says, sinking back into the chair, his eyes finding hers and holding them fast. "Now we rebuild. Aftermath. A phase of consolidation. The Romano threat is a memory. Alliances are being sutured. The mission is to project an image of the Varelli organization as an unbreakable monolith. The subjects Lucian and Elena are bound by a visible cord of trauma. His constant use of we marks the birth of a new unit. Their methods have shifted, becoming collaborative, a stark turn from past solitary tactics. Flight is no longer an impulse. A smile from the subject Elena is noted, the first recorded sign of her hypervigilance receding. "I'm right where I'm supposed to be," she says, a psychological acceptance of her place in this violent world. "Me too," he confirms, a reflection of their symbiosis. Outside, the city remains a landscape of high threat. But here, within the sterile confines of the hospital, they have created a structure with all the clinical markers of attachment, or what some might call love. 3 days later, Elena is in motion. The pain from the wound in her shoulder is a sharp, insistent thing, fighting through the medication. The sling is a visible brand of vulnerability she despises. Her early self-discharge from the hospital wasn't just stubbornness. It was a psychological rejection of the victim's role. Lucian sits beside her, his hand a constant, reassuring weight on her knee. It is a quiet, proprietary claim, a reinforcement of his duty to protect. He suggests they postpone the meeting, an attempt to shield her from the physical cost. Elena's refusal is absolute, a cold calculation based on the need to control the narrative. In their world, she knows, perception is power. A delay, she argues, would be a fatal vacuum where other stories, their enemies' stories, could take root and harden into truth. His subsequent silence is his assent. They share a fundamental understanding of their world's brutal physics. Public perception is the only currency that matters. The attack on the engagement party tore a hole in the city's criminal tapestry, leaving casualties across 3 families and a landscape of ruin. The unmasking of the Col Romano plot exposed cracks in everyone's foundations. Now, the Varelli name requires a performance, a public spectacle of strength and unity. Elena's presence at this council, broken but unbowed, is a most critical part of that performance. The car glides to a stop before a faceless building in an industrial wasteland. The anonymity of the place, no signs, windows barred, marks it as a sanctum, a neutral ground where power can meet without the inconvenience of witnesses. Marco, a lieutenant, waits for them with 4 armed sentinels, the tension radiating from him in waves. "They're all here," he reports, his voice tight. "No one's happy." Lucien's reply is the surgeon's observation. "Happy people don't listen. Distress makes men pliable. The interior is a shock, a state-of-the-art conference room hidden in the urban decay. 8 heads of the families are arrayed around the table like generals before a battle. Elena knows most of them by sight. the Castellanos, the Moretas, the Santos crew. Romano's chair sits empty, a stark, silent testament to the new void in the hierarchy. Dominic Varelli rises as they enter. His own recovery seems almost complete. The suit is perfect, the cut on his face already beginning to fade. But something in his stance has hardened, a new readiness for the throne. He introduces his daughter, Elena, and Lucian. The act detonates a silent charge in the room. Every eye turns to Elena. She is no longer a person, but a problem to be solved, an asset to be measured. Her injuries, her proximity to power, her very viability, all of it is weighed in their cold, analytical gazes. Some look with pity, others with pure calculation. It's new for her, this feeling. She is not being appraised as a woman, but as a variable in a deadly equation. Carlo Moretti is the first to speak, his voice a challenge to protocol. He claims her presence is a violation of archaic patriarchal tradition. This is family business, he declares. Dominic's reply is a gunshot. She is family. Moretti pivots, attempting to disqualify her on the grounds of her sex and her wounds. Lucian's voice cuts through the air, low and sharp, stopping Moretti cold. Careful, Carlo, you finish that sentence and you and I will have a problem. A flush of anger crosses Moretti's face, but he swallows his words. The other leaders watch, impassive. A predator testing a fence. Elena understands the theater of it all. She moves to a chair and sits. The simple act, a declaration, a claiming of her space despite the fire in her shoulder. Lucian takes up a position behind her, a sentinel. Dominic then opens the meeting, his voice grave, framing the attack as an act of unprecedented audacity. Santos, younger and sharper than the old guard, cuts in. Nearly, he says, the word hanging in the air. Nearly succeeding is still failing. He then turns his gaze to Elena, and for the first time, she sees something like professional respect in a rival's eyes. Thanks to the actions of a very brave young woman. The acknowledgement seems to catch her off guard. Castellano offers a counterpoint, his tone laced with skepticism. Was it bravery, he asks, or was it simply recklessness? I wasn't unarmed, Elena says, her voice quiet but carrying the weight of steel. The room goes still. Every man is frozen, their focus entirely on her. I had a vest. I had contingency plans. I knew exactly what I was walking into when I offered myself as bait. She holds Castellano's gaze unflinching. Adrian Cole, she explains, was having a psychological collapse. He was a storm of emotion, desperate and untethered from Romano's cold strategy. It made him an open book. And open books, she knew, were so much easier to burn than composed men. You played him, Santos says. Not a question, but a quiet benediction. I used all of him, she answers, the words tasting of ash. His towering ego, his sick obsession, this fantasy where he was my savior. The admission hangs in the air, a confession of calculated cruelty. Moretti scoffs, disgusted by what he calls the pure emotion of a woman's methods. Elena's voice cuts through his noise, a blade of ice. Remind me, who was the emotional one? Me, walking into that fire with a plan, or Adrian, who incinerated a perfect ambush because his feelings got hurt? A dry laugh crackles from somewhere near Santos. Dominic, feeling the reins slip, pulls the room back into focus. He paints the scene. Romano's grand play for the throne is a smoldering ruin, but the cost, the bodies, the wreckage, the trust ground to dust, is a debt they will all pay. Castellano latches onto the word. Trust. It's the ghost at the table. Romano's lie, a masterful performance spanning 2 decades, has poisoned the very foundations of their world. Lucian gives the eulogy. Romano had the patience of something that waits in the dark. He wore the mask of loyalty until the perfect moment, a marriage that would hand him the keys to the kingdom the moment Dominic's heart stopped beating. And the Cole kid? Santos asks. A pawn, nothing more. His orbit around Elena and his knowledge of the family's rhythms made him the perfect disposable weapon. A shadow of a movement. Lucian's hand tightens on the back of Elena's chair, the only sign of the tremor beneath the surface. Romano fed Cole just enough information to make him feel like a king, all while building the boy's gallows. Cole was always meant to be the fall guy. Except Cole didn't fall, Moretti observes, his gaze locked on Elena. Romano did, because of her. The words are sharp, edged with a new grudging respect. Dominic turns their eyes to the future, to the power vacuum left behind. Romano's empire is a headless snake. His son, the boy meant for Elena, is in the ground. The territory is now bleeding, exposed. You could feel the air in the room change, the shift from memorial to a gathering of wolves. This was always the real meeting, not about grief, but about the feast to come. Castellano is the first to lunge. The East Docks. Romano owned every shipping route. Santos circles him, dismissing the concrete for the abstract, arguing that the political strings are the true prize. Moretti throws a wrench into the works. The violence brought light, and with the light comes scrutiny from police and politicians. He voices the unspoken fear. Will their puppets cut their strings? Lucian waves it away like smoke. They've been on Romano's payroll for 10 years. They won't bite the hand that feeds them just because it's wearing a new ring. The statement is a quiet declaration. The Varley family is ready to take the hand, the ring, and everything attached. Santos hears the threat for what it is. Lucian's reply is a masterpiece of veiled intent, a promise only to protect what is theirs. Yet his unreadable eyes promise so much more. It's a breathtaking display of power held in reserve. And Elena watches. She watches this ancient, intricate dance of threats and promises, a ritual these men have known since birth. She, who was always meant to be a portrait on the wall, is now sitting at the table. No, not anymore. There's more, she says, and the room falls silent again. Romano wasn't alone. He had someone on the inside. Security codes, guard rotations, our family's private schedule. Someone was whispering in his ear. Moretti spits out Cole's name. Elena cuts him down. Cole could get to me, but not to the operation. He knew where I'd be for dinner, but the attack hit during a security shift change known only to this family. They used entry codes that are changed every single week. Adrian couldn't have given him that. A shadow passes over Dominic's face. You're saying there's another traitor. Elena's voice is cold, clear, clinical. I'm saying we're fools if we don't. The silence that follows is the living thing, thick with suspicion. Her theory, that a cancer remains inside these walls, makes every man a potential enemy to the others. Every glance is an accusation. That is a hell of an accusation, Castellano says, a feeble attempt to calm the waters. It's a hell of a situation, she fires back, refusing to let them look away. She makes it clear, this isn't an accusation, it's a new reality, a state of permanent, necessary suspicion. From his chair, Santos watches her with a hunter's fascination. You've really thought this through, He probes, trying to map the depths of her mind. She credits the clarity to weeks of forced stillness, the perfect incubator for obsession. When asked what else she sees, her eyes find Lucian, a silent question seeking his permission to continue. Lucian's gesture is almost nothing. A slight dip of the chin that could be consent, or it could be the start of a pre-orchestrated play. Elena turns back to them and shatters their entire view of the tragedy. She tells them Romano wasn't the disease. He was just a symptom. What if it's not? What if it's a symptom of something bigger? She paints a picture of a dying world where the old codes of loyalty are crumbling to dust. This rot creates a vacuum, she warns, drawing in predators like Romano from the inside and jackals like Adrian from without. Her final word is a prophecy. Adapt or be erased. Moretti's scoff is the sound of a man trying to deny the rot he feels in his own bones. The old ways worked for 50 years. Moretti protests, clinging to a history that is already a ghost. Elena's answer is a scar, raw and personal. The old ways got my father taken, and a bullet put in me. This isn't a discussion, it's the evidence of his failure laid bare on the table. She isn't calling for a revolution, she explains, but an evolution, a shift from relying on the hollow promise of loyalty to the cold certainty of technology and protocol. Santos turns the spotlight on her, his voice sharp. You? The single word fills the room with a new kind of danger. Behind her, you can almost see the muscles in Lucian's back harden into stone. Elena's denial is swift, tactical, placing her father and Lucian as the line of succession, while she is merely a new kind of weapon. Castellano's sneer, "If we let you," is his last desperate attempt to cage her. Elena looks right through the bars. You can write me off, or you can see what I just did. One by one, her eyes meet theirs, a quiet challenge that holds them all captive. The silence that follows is heavy, with the weight of men recalculating an entire world. You can feel Lucian's restraint, a primal need to shield her that he knows he cannot show here. The spell is broken by laughter. Santos, a deep, genuine sound of release. It changes everything. I like her, he declares, and the foundation of their power structure cracks. He lays out his diagnosis for them all. She's got guts, and she's right. He sees the rot she spoke of, their complacency a fatal weakness. This is crazy, Moretti gasps, the last cry of a dying era. Santos meets his panic with brutal logic, framing it as a choice between change and extinction. He proposes they let her in, a trial run, her position contingent on results. Castellano demands to know the price. Proof. It is Lucian who speaks, his voice calm as he defines the test. Elena finds Romano's contact, and she's in. A brilliant, cruel move. He seizes her rebellion and twists it into a trial of his own making, a quest where she still needs his final approval. Her sharp intake of breath is the only sound she makes. You can see the fire she swallows down, a scream she smothers for the sake of a game. Dominic sets the terms. 1 month. Success means a seat at this table. Failure is a silence too terrible to name. I won't fail, she says, a vow that sounds more like a prayer against the fear she must be feeling. The vote passes, but the lines of fracture are clear. For the rest of the meeting, her goal is simple: prove her worth, but never appear to be a threat. Elena weighs in where she can, her contributions sharp, logical, and constructive. She needs them to see an asset, not a rival. By the time it ends, the strain is visible, a fine tremor in her hands as the medicine wears off and the pain returns. It is Lucian who sees it. It is Lucian who ends it. Elena needs to rest. He stands and guides her from the room, his hand on her back a shield and a claim, daring any of them to object. None of them do. In the quiet dark of the car, she finally lets go, slumping against the leather. Her assessment of her own triumphant gambit is a raw whisper of frustration. That was stupid. Lucian feigns confusion. Which part? She wants him to specify that her trial is the mole hunt he's just forced on her. His answer is a cold statement of fact, not an assurance. You won't. He closes the distance between them, his touch a prelude to a carefully crafted speech, a masterclass in psychological warfare. He starts with praise to create a bond. You're the smartest person in that room. Then comes the real message, the one about control. You wanted power, and I've given it to you, but it's tangled in impossible knots that I designed myself. His icy calm offers no real comfort. You asked for a seat at the table. This is the cost of entry. He's throwing her into the deep end, no life raft in sight, and expects her to swim. She can't even find the words to respond, her mind reeling from this new, terrifying game. I thought I'd have more time to get ready, she says, almost begging for a little mercy. Lucian dismisses it, twisting her entire life into some kind of secret training exercise, making her feel foolish for being overwhelmed. Then he dangles a line of support. I'll help you. Marco will help you. Even your father will help you. It's an illusion of a safety net, one that just makes him the center of her universe, and then the catch. The credit has to be yours. So, it's not for her sake. If he pulls the strings and she wins, she's just his puppet. But if she wins on her own, a process he can still guide, she becomes something far more valuable, a true weapon he can wield. A chilling smile spreads across his face. Then you become dangerous. He moves her to the main valley estate for security, stripping away her freedom and locking her in his gilded cage. Inside the mansion, they're scrubbing away the physical signs of the recent violence, a perfect mirror of their psychological denial. Elena, however, is a different story. The sights, the sounds, it's all replaying in her head, a classic sign of trauma. Dominic asks about the meeting, and Lucian cuts straight to the point. She has 1 month to find Romano's contact. You can see the anger tighten in Dominic's jaw. That wasn't the plan. Lucian just shrugs it off, placing the blame squarely on Elena. Plans change. She agreed to it. Just as the two men are about to clash, a power struggle brewing, Elena cuts in, reclaiming her story. I always have a choice, and I made mine. It's a crucial lie she tells herself, the foundation of the trauma bond that's already starting to form. I'm going to find the leak, prove myself, and earn my place. End of discussion. The two men, used to being in charge, can only gape at her, their power stolen in an instant. Her father's smile is a strange, painful mix of pride and fear, and he falls back on the old line, "You really are your mother's daughter." Elena, needing to escape the weight of the room, runs. She ends up in her old bedroom, a time capsule of a life that's gone forever and just collapses. The physical ache is nothing compared to the crushing weight of what she's agreed to. 30 days to unearth a traitor buried deep within their world. An impossible task, and that's the entire point. A knock on the door breaks the silence. It's Lucian, playing the part of the caregiver, a bowl of soup in his hands. It's a classic move. Offer comfort to create dependence. You need to eat. She refuses, but he pulls out the doctor's orders card, admitting with a slight smirk he financially incentivized the advice. The dark humor is a hook meant to pull down her guard, and it works. She smiles, a textbook symptom of Stockholm Syndrome, finding something to like in her captor. He sits on her bed, invading her space, making it intimate. Talk to me. He's looking for a weakness, about why you're staring at the ceiling like it personally wronged you, and she gives it to him. I'm in over my head. Welcome to family business, he says, making her panic feel completely normal, expected even. He then spins her situation, comparing her baptism by fire to how others are slowly broken in over years. Her comeback is sharp and true. Because you threw me there. He doesn't miss a beat, twisting it back on her. Because you jumped. He makes her the author of her own downfall, the one who chose this. His face turns hard. Do you regret it? The question is a turning point, forcing her to double down on this sick relationship, to actively choose the cage he's built around her. No, she says after a long moment, I don't regret it. I'm just scared. Admitting fear but not regret, it's the perfect summary of where her head is at. Lucian reinforces the twisted logic of their world. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He's training her to live in a constant state of anxiety, telling her it's what will keep her alive. Get some rest, he orders, but pauses when she calls his name. She thanks him for believing in her, pulling the knot of their bond even tighter. For a second, his mask slips. I've always believed in you, Elena. I just needed you to believe in yourself. Then he leaves her alone with the impossible task. She starts to eat the soup. His conditioning is already taking hold. Elena starts a basic threat assessment. The list of potential traitors is long, filled with all the top players. Marco, senior security guys, her father's inner circle. The fact that they're all still breathing means the rat is either not among them or is terrifyingly good at hiding. She opens a device and starts building a rough profile, comparing personnel files with security access and timelines. The attack needed someone who knew their routines, their schedules, the very layout of the buildings. That narrows it down, but not nearly enough. She keeps at it until her body gives out, eyes blurring and muscles screaming in protest. She takes her pills, sets an alarm, and tries to sleep. But the nightmares are waiting for her. The images hit her again and again. The attacker's face, Adrian, twisted in pure rage, aiming for her father. She relives the gunshot, sees the look of absolute devastation on Lucian's face. She wakes up gasping for air, drenched in sweat. It's 3 a.m. She's been asleep for maybe 2 hours. The bed feels like an enemy territory, so she gets up and starts walking. She puts on a robe and moves through the dark, silent house. No staff. The security shift changes at 4, so this is the quietest time. She wanders, aimless, until she finds herself outside her father's study. The door is slightly open. A sliver of light cuts through the darkness, which is wrong. He's never up this late. Elena pushes the door open. Her father, Dominic, sits at his desk, buried under a mountain of paperwork. He looks up instantly, his face a mask of professional concern. Can't sleep? He asks. Bad dreams. she answers, keeping it short. He gestures to the files. Romano and I started together, he says, changing the subject completely. Did you know that? 30 years ago, we were just two kids trying to make a name for ourselves. Elena sinks into the chair across from him. What happened? Life, he says. Choices. He started caring more about power than loyalty. I wanted to build something that would last. He slides a photograph across the desk. Two young men, him and Romano, smiling happy. I should have seen it. All the signs were there. You can't blame yourself for trusting someone. Can't I? I'm the one responsible for everyone in this organization. My job is to protect everyone, and I failed. Catastrophically. He puts the picture back on the desk. Your mother would have seen it. She always saw right through people's acts. The air in the room grows heavy. Tell me about her, Elena asks, her voice barely a whisper. You never talk about her. There's a long, heavy silence. When Dominic finally speaks, his voice is thick with pain. She was fire and ice, brilliant, ruthless when she had to be, and absolutely fearless. She could walk into a room full of killers and own it in minutes. A faint smile touches his lips. Sound familiar? Yes, you're just like her, and honestly, it terrifies me. Why? The answer is a punch to the gut. Because she died for the exact same reasons you're doing this, to prove herself by taking insane risks and refusing to let anyone protect her. She was running an intelligence op against a rival family, he says, the words tight, fighting their way out. Information gathering. I told her the risk was too great, that she had to wait. She went in anyway. Elena feels a crushing weight in her chest. The story they gave her was a car accident. She never knew the real cause. What happened to her? They found her. They wired her car with a bomb. She and your birth father, died instantly. His eyes break away from hers, unable to hold the contact. I took you in because she was my sister, and letting you disappear into the system would have been like losing her all over again. And there it is, the final jagged piece of the puzzle that explains everything. You've been trying to protect me, she whispers, the realization a cold dread, because you couldn't protect her. Yes, Dad, I know. And I know how I've acted is an unfair burden to place on you. And I see now that I've held you back. But watching you walk into that ballroom, knowing you could be killed, his voice cracks, a fissure, the rock of his authority. It was like watching her die a second time. Elena rises, moves around the heavy desk that has always stood between them, and rests her good arm on his shoulder. He reaches up, pulling her into an embrace, and for the first time in her life, she feels the unshakable leader of their family tremble. I'm sorry, he says, the words muffled against her, for all of it. For the man he tried to force on her, for the cage he built around her, for never seeing the woman she had become. You were just trying to protect yourself from your own ghosts. It was the wrong way. Maybe, she concedes, but I'm still here, and I'm not backing down. They just stand there for a moment, a father and daughter finding a fragile piece in the ruins. When she pulls away, he looks 10 years older, but somehow lighter. This thing that's happening with Lucian, he starts, his tone careful. Are you sure? I am. He's not a simple man to care for. I know, she says, her voice steady, but I don't need simple. I need real. Dominic studies her face, then gives a slow, tired nod. Your mother said the same thing about your father. She chose him knowing exactly the life he led, and she never regretted it, not even at the end. He draws a ragged breath. She died on a mission, fighting for what she believed in, with the man she loved. There are worse ways to leave this world. The logic doesn't quite settle in Elena's mind, but she understands the heart behind it. In that instant, her purpose sharpens. I'm going to find Romano's mole, she says, not to prove anything, but because it's the right thing to do. For you, for our family, for everyone we lost. I know you will. A faint smile touches his lips. Just try to avoid getting shot again. My heart isn't built for this. I'll do my best. And with that, she leaves him to his ghosts and his paperwork, feeling more centered than she has in days. Yes, the mountain ahead was immense, but she wasn't climbing it alone anymore. Back on her floor, she finds Lucian waiting in the hall. Couldn't sleep either, she asks. Sleep isn't a luxury my line of work affords, he replies. Comes with the territory. His eyes sweep over her, a clinical assessment. Are you all right? Getting there, my father and we finally talked about my mother, about regret, about a lot of things. She touches the lock to her door. Will you come in? He hesitates for a fraction of a second. Elena, I'm not trying to get into your bed. I'm asking you to be here while I go over the intel. That's a completely different thing. After a beat of silence, he follows her into the room. Elena immediately spreads her notes and laptop across the bed, turning the soft space into a war room. Lucian pulls up a chair and just watches. Talk me through it, he says. Sometimes saying things out loud makes the pieces fit. Romano needed high-level intel on our security. Guard schedules, access codes, blueprints, everything. That information only exists in 3 places. The main security office, your personal files, and my father's private records. Marco runs security. I have my files, and my father's are behind a biometric lock. That means the mole is either Marco, you, my father, or someone who got to one of you. Marco has been with us for 15 years. I have trusted him with my life on the record. My father obviously is not a suspect, which leaves you. Elena looks him straight in the eye. Before you go on the defensive, I'm not accusing you. I'm saying there's a hole in my theory. Lucian leans back in the chair, his mind clearly working. What if the data wasn't pulled from a file? What if the mole never needed to? What if they had access to the people, bugs, hidden cameras, someone who could just watch and listen? A sudden, chilling understanding dawns on Elena's face. The IT guys, they install and maintain all of our tech, every camera, every server, and Romano insisted on paying for a full network upgrade. He called it a gift, a gesture of peace. We let his people install the whole damn system. When? 6 months ago. 6 months. The timeline clicks into place with sickening precision. It's exactly when his niece, Adrienne, started weaving her way into Elena's life, the final act of what was clearly Romano's grand, narcissistic design. We have to tear apart every piece of hardware his team touched, Elena says, her voice low. Cameras, servers, comms, all of it. That'll take time, and if the mole gets wind that we're onto them, then we send them down the wrong path. We make them think we're looking in the wrong place. Elena starts typing, pulling up the family's command structure. We'll announce a full security review, standard stuff after an attack, but we'll make a big show of focusing on personnel and physical security. The obvious stuff. While they're watching the front door, we'll be gutting the system from the inside out. The plan is sound, but we need someone we can trust to run the technical side. What about that consultant you used last year? The one who locked out the warehouse network? Lucian's expression barely shifts, but his eyes sharpen. Chen, he's good, he's quiet, and his only loyalty is to the money. He's perfect. An outsider is exactly what we need. Someone with no history here, no alliances to get in the way. Elena holds his gaze. Do you trust him? As much as I trust anyone. Then get him on the phone tomorrow. Tell him it's an emergency, and we'll double his rate. Triple. Chen doesn't do rush jobs for anything less than triple. Fine. Whatever it costs, pay it. Elena closes the laptop, the soft click echoing in the quiet room. The pain in her shoulder, which had faded to a dull ache, now flares back to life as the medication wears off. We have a plan. It's a start. Lucian rises and walks to the side of her bed. Take your pills. Yes, sir. I'm serious, Elena. You're no good to anyone if you're crippled by pain. She swallows the pills with a glass of water, Lucian watching her like a hawk to make sure she does before he turns to leave. Stay. Elena says, the word slipping out before she could stop it, an instinct born of trauma and exhaustion. He freezes, his back to her. Elena, I'm not asking for anything, just your presence. I sleep better when you're here. A faint heat rises in her cheeks. Is that a sign of weakness? No. He turns back, his face an unreadable mask. It's a sign of honesty. He takes off his shoes and lies down on top of the covers, a careful, deliberate distance between them. Elena turns onto her good side to face him. Tell me something, she whispers, a plea for something real, for a piece of the man behind the killer. A long silence hangs in the air before he speaks, a perfectly timed pause. Then he offers up a piece of his tortured soul. I have nightmares about the people I've had to kill. This isn't just a confession, it's a key designed to unlock her sympathy, to bind them together in the dark. He talks about his actions as a grim necessity, calling regret a luxury, the classic justification of a man who lives by the sword. Elena feels her heart seize in her chest, a purely physical reaction to the calculated poison of his words. But it doesn't make the faces go away. He adds the final perfect twist of the knife. Her apology is a reflex, a sign that his pain has become hers. He shifts then, painting his violent life as a terrible weight he chose to carry, casting himself as a tragic figure. He ties his entire crisis of faith directly to her. But then you showed up. He places the burden of his salvation squarely on her shoulders, a masterstroke for a woman already primed to see the good in him. He speaks of wanting a different life, a real one, but only if she can accept the monster he is, the final brutal test of her devotion. Her fingers weave into his, a silent surrender. She isn't running, not this time. His admission, that's what scares me, is a carefully constructed paradox, a performance of sensitivity that only highlights his own intricate darkness. They linger there in the shared quiet, a fragile illusion of normalcy, Sleep finally claims her, a mercy delivered by a mix of painkillers and the sheer weight of her exhaustion. The last sensations are the pressure of his thumb tracing circles on her skin, a gesture of ownership, and his whispered vow, "I won't let anything happen to you." A promise of protection that feels like a cage. A flicker of dissent dies in her thoughts, consumed by the safe dark of giving in. 2 days later, a new piece is placed on the board. An operator named Chen, a specialist in seeing without being seen, whose unremarkable face is his greatest tool. He shows up with 3 aluminum briefcases and an air that bypasses pleasantries. The mark of a man seasoned in brutal internal wars. The meeting is in a conference room. Lucian and Marco are already there. Her body is still mending, a constant dull ache that serves as a souvenir of the trauma. Chen pegs her immediately, not by name, but by her role in the violence. The one who took a bullet. Elena's own verdict, a little of both, brave and stupid, reveals a clear-eyed view of her own recklessness. Chen's reply is clipped, all business. Triple rate buys a lot of speed. He is a transaction, not a savior. He opens the cases, revealing an arsenal of specialized electronics. Chen cuts straight to the heart of the paranoia, his voice flat. "Lucian says you think you're bugged." The certainty in his eyes is absolute, a 90% conviction. Then comes the ghost in the machine. A complete system overhaul 6 months ago by Romano's people, a date that aligns perfectly with when the secrets began to bleed. When he calls their security absolute garbage, it isn't an insult. It's a clinical diagnosis of a fatal flaw. "We trusted him," Marco pleads, a fragile defense that shatters against the first commandment of their world. Never trust anyone in this business. He places a device on the table, its metallic shell cold and final, a tool for a deep electronic purge, demanding full access under the guise of a simple network check. Elena confirms the cover story, a check on structural integrity, her voice a thin veil over the truth. Chen offers them a timeline, words that hang in the air like a sentence. Days, maybe a week. He then presents them with the 2-edged sword they'll find. "Do you pull the bugs and let them know you're onto them?" he asks. "Or do you leave them in place and start feeding them lies?" It is the classic fork in a road paved with shadows. A shared look passes between them, a flicker of dawning horror that they had never considered the moves beyond the next. When they ask what he would do, he turns it back on them, his gaze sharp enough to draw blood. The choice depends entirely on what they're willing to lose. "Want to find the mole? You let the poison spread. Want to secure your house? You burn it to the ground." The options are stark, irreconcilable. Without a single breath of hesitation, Elena's voice cuts through the silence, hard as steel. "We need the mole." In that moment, she is fully baptized into their world of paranoia and war. The safety of the fortress now matters more than her own. "Your funeral," Chen says, the words empty of pity, a simple acknowledgement of the path she's chosen. He needs a guide for the sweep, a ghost who belongs in every room. He dismisses Marco as a shadow that looms too large, and his eyes land on Elena, a part of the house's very architecture. Her position is a master key, granting her silent passage through any door, the perfect camouflage for his work. Lucian's objection is a guttural, possessive roar. "Absolutely not." But Elena counters, her logic cold and sharp, a sign of a strategist emerging from the chrysalis. She sees the truth. The risk isn't in who guides the hunter, but in the hunt itself. By walking at his side, she can control the story. She accepts. Chen's instruction is a simple, impossible task. Pretend nothing is wrong. 2 hours later, a faint, rhythmic chirp from his scanner validates their terror. There are ghosts at the walls. They start in the main conference room, a space they once considered a sanctuary. 20 minutes is all it takes to turn it into a tomb. Chen finds 3 of them, 3 tiny black spiders clinging to the shadows. Sophisticated, he murmurs, his tone clinical. Not spy store trash. They are being watched by a professional. When asked if the signal can be traced, he explains the method: a local receiver, a beating heart that, if found, would lead them to the traitor's face. They leave the devices, as planned, and then the chilling truth descends upon them. The security meeting from 2 days ago, where they laid bare their entire plan, was broadcast to the enemy. The realization hits Elena like a physical blow, a sudden plunge into ice water. The enemy not only knows they are being hunted, but knows the exact path of the hunter. The clock is no longer ticking. It is screaming. The watcher will now flee, or they will turn and fight. Chen, detached as a surgeon, continues his methodical work. His advice is a line from a textbook on how to act when you're already dead. Maintain your routine, project calm, and speak no truths where the walls can hear. The rest of the afternoon is a slow, agonizing quantification of their ruin, as the scanner reveals the infection has spread to every vital organ of their operation. The discovery of a micro camera, a tiny, unblinking eye aimed at the hallway outside Elena's bedroom, is a violent psychological trespass. The sanctity of her private world has been desecrated. Chen's observation that it was placed externally offers no comfort. Her mind races, a frantic slideshow of every private moment, every hushed conversation in that hall, now seen through the horrifying lens of hostile surveillance. By evening, the map of the breach shows a deliberate, insidious pattern. The bugs are not scattered randomly. They are clustered around the centers of power and knowledge. From the darkness of a secure closet, Chen's voice confirms the intimacy of the betrayal. Someone knew exactly what they wanted to hear. This wasn't a blind cast of a net. It was the precise incision of a scalpel. 23 devices found, and the count is still rising. The digital map glows with ominous red clusters over offices, meeting rooms, the security hub itself. The goal was to see the future, to know their every strategic thought before it was even fully formed. The power sources tell a story of their own, a life of 6 to 8 months, a timeline that confirms every paranoid fear they've harbored. But the phantom they are chasing, the location of the main receiver, remains the one unsolvable problem. The signal's radius is a half-mile curse, a ghost hidden among dozens of buildings and thousands of lives, making a search almost impossible. Chen hunches over his gear, trying to read the faint discrepancies in signal strength, a high-tech priest divining a location from digital whispers. The analysis is shattered by Lucian's entrance. The crisis is written in the hard lines of his face, in the frantic energy that fills the room with him. His words, "We have a problem," are the quiet prelude to a storm. Surveillance has escalated to violence. An attempt has been made on Chen's assistant's life. The game has changed. Case File 7B. It began as an act of calculated brutality, a car forced from the road on its way to them. Lucien's diagnosis was instant, his voice grim. Whoever's listening knows exactly what we're doing, and they're done playing nice. The sterile air of the hospital waiting room, thick with the scent of antiseptic and fear, was the new stage for their tragedy. The target, David Chen, was alive but broken. A concussion, fractured ribs. He was clear enough, though, to give the details from his hospital bed. "Black SUV," he rasped. "Total pro job. Came up on me at a red light, just pushed me into the intersection. I swerved, ate a pole. They never even slowed down." He never saw the driver. Windows were tinted, but I got a partial plate. He breathes out 3 numbers and a letter, a prayer in the dark. Marco's fingers fly across his phone, chasing the ghost. Elena watches David, sees past the defiant anger to the tremor in his hands, the fear he can't quite swallow. She asks who knew. Just Chen, and whoever you told. The circle of betrayal tightens, containing only Lucien and Marco. In Elena's mind, 2 terrible possibilities bloom. A traitor so deep they're invisible, or an enemy so all-seeing that any change in routine triggers a lethal response. The elder Chen pleads for retreat. "This job isn't worth your life." But David scoffs, a wounded animal refusing to be cornered. "The hell it's not. You're paying triple. I'm not getting run off by some corporate goon. I'm a New Yorker." "We don't run from traffic." The gallows humor from Elena is a small, strange light in the darkness. "You sure?" "I'm sure. Get me a laptop and a bottle of painkillers. I can work from here." Marco's phone chimes. He steps away, and when he returns, the tension in his jaw could shatter stone. "Plates are a shell company, Northside Logistics. Guess the parent company?" "Romano." Lucien says the name like a curse, his voice hollow. "Romano's son, actually. Michael, the one who disappeared after his old man fell." For Elena, the name is a drop of ice in her veins. He's still in the city, and he wants to finish what his father started. Marco holds up a photo. Michael Romano, 30 years old, with the same dead, predatory eyes as his father. "He's been seen twice this week, both times near our properties," Marco says. Lucien reads it as an ending. "He's cleaning house, Lucy, tying up loose ends before he vanishes. Or before he makes his next play," Elena counters, her mind already 3 moves ahead. His father failed, but the machine is still running. The surveillance, the contact, all of it. If Michael's smart and he looks it, he'll use everything his father built to try again. The son, trying to redeem the legacy of the father. A classic tragedy in the making. Then we find him before he finds us. Lucien turns to Chen. "How fast can you finish this sweep with David down?" 2 days, maybe 3. You have 1. Then we go dark, rip out every bug, change every code. We assume we are naked to the world." "That will tell them we know," Chen states. "They already know." Lucien's voices gravel. "They tried to kill David. The time for subtlety is over." Chen gives a single professional nod and departs. In the dim hospital corridor, Elena stops Lucien. "We need to talk about the plan." "What about it?" "Finding the bugs won't matter if we can't find Michael. He's the disease. He knows everything his father knew, and he has absolutely nothing to lose." Her voice drops to a conspiratorial whisper. "I think we need to bait him." Lucien's rejection is a physical thing, a wall going up between them. "Absolutely not." "Just hear me out. I don't need to hear you." "I know precisely what you're about to say." Elena's voice was sharp, brittle as shattered glass. "And the answer is no." "You have no idea what I was going to say." You are going to offer yourself up again, as if getting shot once wasn't lesson enough for you. It worked, he countered, the logic of a man clinging to a past victory. You were lucky. Adrian was a ruin of a man, an open wound. Michael Romano is not. He is patient, he is cold, and he just proved he will kill to protect what is his. A chilling clarity had settled in her, the terrible logic of the hunted who now thinks like the hunter. He thinks I'm the last loose thread, the girl who unmade his father's world. If I give him a clear shot, he takes it, and I am left to walk through what remains of my life knowing I let you. Lucien's voice was a low rasp, strangled by the thing he couldn't say. No, we find another way. There is no other way. Time has run out, and he is a phantom. We either force him into the light or live forever, waiting for his blade in the dark. Then we'll live looking over our shoulders. It was a moment suspended in time, an impossible choice between her desperate need to end the torment and his instinct to shield her from it, even if it meant a life spent in shadows. He saw the fear that drove her, but couldn't let it be the thing that consumed her. I'm doing this, she said, her voice a quiet oath. With you or without you. You can either help me set the stage properly, or you can pray for me from the wings. That isn't fair. No, she breathed, but it's the truth. Her hand found his, a small, warm anchor in the storm. I know you're afraid. So am I. But we both know there are no other moves left to make. He closed his eyes, a slow, final surrender to the inevitable. I hate that you're right. It happens, she whispered, a ghost of her old smile touching her lips. More than you think. My way, then, a location we control, every exit covered, you wear a vest. Of course. And if anything feels wrong, one single thing, you walk away. No last-minute gambles, no heroics. Swear it. I swear. He brought his forehead to hers, a desperate, silent plea against the coming darkness. If you get hurt. I won't. Then you will do what you have always done. You will endure. You will protect what is ours. She finished for him, pulling back just enough to meet his gaze, her eyes promising retribution. And you will burn whoever is responsible to the scorched earth. But it won't come to that, because we are going to choreograph this down to the last second, execute it flawlessly, and we are going to end him. Tonight. Tonight? Michael is running, scared. Trying to kill David in broad daylight wasn't a show of force, it was a cry of desperation. A desperate man makes mistakes. We will be his. Her analysis was terrifyingly precise, a predator's insight into her prey. Marco appeared in the doorway. My people are all over the city. Michael's a ghost. That's because he's waiting for his moment, Elena said. So we'll give him one, a place public enough to make him feel secure, contained enough to be his cage. Where? Marco asked, a flicker in her eyes, 1,000 possibilities calculated and discarded in an instant, searching for the one place Michael would see as a perfect stage for his final act, the memorial service. The words fell into a confused silence. What memorial service? Lucien asked, his voice deliberately slow as if speaking to a madwoman. Her own voice was cool, measured. The one we're announcing today for the victims of the attack, at the church on 7th. It's already been decided that I'll give the eulogy. The bait was magnificent in its cruelty. Michael would see a chance to strike her at her most vulnerable, in a holy place with a dozen ways to escape. Too perfect, perhaps, but she had the final damning piece. He'll believe it's real. We'll leak the security plan in one of the rooms we know is bugged. Make it sound like we're scrambling to keep it secret. The trap was for his own arrogance. He would hear their whispers, believe he had outsmarted them, and walk into his own undoing. Marco's acceptance was a single, sharp nod. We can seal that church tight. Men on every door. He steps inside. The cage snaps shut. Lucien, ever the voice of caution, of fear for her, played his part. And if he doesn't come alone? Then we bring a bigger army, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. But my guess is he'll be alone. He wants to disappear after this, quietly. A war on the steps of a church brings the kind of attention he cannot survive. Lucien dragged a hand through his hair, the physical act of a man watching the woman he loves step into the abyss. This is madness. This is our only shot, Elena said, and we're taking it. And with that, the gears of the tragedy began to turn. Marco's voice on the phone became a low murmur, weaving a fiction about a private family service for the church rector. In a room miles away, Chen performed a play of frantic whispers for an audience of hidden microphones. And Lucien moved through the shadows, dispatching 24 armed men with a single order: bring Michael back alive, if the world allowed it. For Elena, the preparation was internal, a stealing of the soul. The ballistic vest was a cold, heavy weight, a promise and a burden. The small pistol Lucien made her take was a foreign object tucked against the black silk of her dress. Do you remember what to do with that? He asked, his eyes tracing the lines of the weapon beneath the fabric. Her reply was mechanical, stripped of all feeling. Point, shoot. Just try not to hit any of my men. I'll manage. Elena, she looked up, meeting the storm in his eyes. I've been preparing for this for 6 months. I know what to do. I know, he conceded, the words tearing at him. It doesn't make this any easier to watch. Her fingers touched his jaw, feeling the knot of tension there. After tonight, it's done. We'll have Michael. The listening devices will be gone. We can finally breathe. And if it goes wrong, we adapt. It's what we do. She kissed him, a brief, desperate collision. He mumbled against her lips, I know. That's what terrifies me. The place was an old cathedral, a tomb of stone and silence, perfect for a trap. One massive entrance, 2 smaller doors, a choir loft for a God's eye view. Marco's men melted into the architecture, becoming gargoyles and shadows, waiting. There she stood, the solitary offering, a single dark figure in the vast, empty heart of the cathedral. The service was an hour away, a calculated silence for Michael to scout his stage. She was utterly exposed in a dress the color of mourning, the vest a secret penance against her ribs. The gun offered no comfort, not against the kind of ending that could unfold here. Her voice, a whisper into a hidden wire, cut through the hallowed quiet. Anything? From the balcony above, a voice replied, stripped of all warmth. Lucien, a helpless god watching the sacrifice. Stay sharp. The wait stretched time, each second an eternity, as she pretended to read from a script. She feigned studying her notes, a performance for an audience of 1, while her eyes methodically swept the cavern of a room. Light bled through stained glass, throwing fractured colors across the stone floor, a beautiful distortion that made it hard to see. Then the groan of the main doors, a sound that stopped her heart. A figure stepped out of the light, a man in a janitor's coveralls holding a toolbox. His movements were easy, practiced, meant to be ignored, but she knew that silhouette. She'd studied it in photographs until it was burned into her mind. Target acquired, she breathed, the words barely a puff of air. Main entrance, dressed as maintenance. Lucienne's voice was instant in her ear. I see him. Hold. Michael walked down the center aisle, his gait slow, deliberate. His eyes darted from shadow to shadow, searching for the flaw in the design, even as his own monstrous ego pulled him forward, closing the distance between them. Her heart hammered against the inside of her ribs, a primal drumbeat of fear. He drew closer, 20 feet, then 15, 10. Miss Varelli. His voice was bland, an oil slick over the deep, dark water beneath. Father Matthews sent me. Said there was an issue with the sound system. A simple lie to open a door. Did he? Her hand drifted, a slow, deliberate motion toward the weapon hidden at her side. Funny, he didn't mention any problem to me. Maybe it slipped his mind. You know how he gets. Michael set the toolbox on the floor. The snap of its latches was like a pair of gunshots in the silence. I'll just take a look. I don't think so. The spell was broken. At her refusal, the mask of the ordinary man dissolved, revealing the monster who could not stand to be denied. Excuse me? She said it again, louder this time, her voice ringing off the stone walls. I said, I don't think so, because you're not here for the microphones, and we both know it. Elena raises the pistol, holding it low but letting the light catch the steel. Hello, Michael. For a heartbeat, everything stops. Then he smiles, the same chilling, soulless smile as his father, an expression of pure predatory math. Clever girl, your father's daughter through and through. His hand moves towards a toolbox on the floor, but not clever enough. And then the world shatters into violence. Michael has a gun. She throws herself behind the podium as the room explodes with the deafening report of gunfire. Lucien's voice, stripped of its calm, barks orders in her ear, layered over the sound of boots hitting the floor from all sides. Michael fires twice. Both shots go wide. From her cover, Elena returns fire, training guiding her hand to aim for center mass, again and again, until the slide locks back on an empty chamber. Hands grab her, hauling her from the chaos toward a side exit. It's Marco, his face a mask of cold function. Move now! Her voice is raw. Did we get him? He's down. Don't know if he's dead or just hurt. Either way, you're out. They spill out into the blinding sun. A car is waiting, engine growling. She is shoved into the back seat, Marco tumbling in after her. The car is moving before the doors are even closed. Her body is racked with tremors, the violent aftermath of an adrenaline flood. Is Lucien? He's fine. He's with Michael. We'll meet you at the safe house. The safe house is a bland apartment in a building owned by the family. Inside, Elena paces like a caged animal, a desperate attempt to burn off the terror while Marco works his phone, hunting for information. A high-pitched ringing fills her ears, and every muscle aches from the impact of her fall. 30 minutes crawl by before Lucien walks in. His shirt is stained with blood. It isn't his, and the relief that washes over her is a physical thing. His face is carved from stone, set in a look of cold fury. Michael? she asks. Alive, he says, the word clipped. Shoulder and a leg, he'll live to stand trial. Lucian crosses to her then, his hands coming up to cup her face, his eyes searching hers for damage. Are you hurt? No. Shaken, but I'm fine. You shot him. It's not a question. I shot at him. I don't know if I actually. You hit him, he interrupts. Shoulder shot was yours, clean through, just missed the artery. Then his mouth is on hers, a kiss that is more punishment than passion. It is a collision of relief and rage, a brutal confirmation of the bond forged between them in the heart of violence. Don't you ever do that again? The command is absolute. Do what? Follow the plan we all agreed on. Scare me like that. When he pulled that gun. Lucian's voice cracks, a rare fissure in his composure. I thought I was going to watch you die. Elena collapses against him, seeking sanctuary in the very source of her high-stakes terror, a textbook fall into the arms of a captor. I'm okay. We're okay. And it's over. Is it? Marco's voice from this doorway cuts through the moment, because Michael is talking and what he's saying is very interesting. They gather around a speaker. Michael's voice, weak with pain but dripping with his usual arrogance, confirms everything. The surveillance was his father's play, a prelude to a hostile takeover with Michael acting as floor manager. And then there's more. He starts naming names, dirty cops, and then the final devastating reveal, the traitor inside the Varelli family who tore down all their walls. The air in the room turns to ice when they hear the name. Thomas Reeves, Michael sneers through the recording. Head of your IT. He installed everything, maintained it, even helped us map out the best spots for the bugs. We gave him $200,000 up front, another $100,000 when it was done. Reeves, a quiet man, 3 years with the family, who held the keys to their entire digital kingdom. I want him found, Lucian says, his voice a blade of ice. Now. Already on it, Marco answers. But he's gone, hasn't been seen since yesterday. Then we find out where he ran, and we drag him back. Lucian's gaze finds Elena's again. You did it! You found the mole. The praise lands like a physical blow, a powerful reward that cements her value, her place. She takes it in, a cocktail of grim satisfaction and bone-deep exhaustion. The 1-month deadline to find a traitor had been met in 3 weeks. What happens now? She asks. Now, Lucian says, we burn it all down. Every system Reeves touched gets ripped out. Every code is changed. Every piece of hardware audited. He pulls her close. And you get a permanent seat at the table. No more tests. No more proving yourself. You earned this. Elena leans into him, the last of the adrenaline finally draining away. What about Michael and his father? They'll face justice. Our kind of justice, not the courts, he clarifies, his face grim. The statement draws a hard line between their world and the one outside. The council makes the final call, but my guess is exile. If they're lucky, a bullet if they're not. And Reeves? Same deal. He betrayed the family. There's only one price for that. The lack of guilt she feels is a chilling landmark in her own transformation. She's aligning with their code, where empathy for outsiders is a weakness. To her, the coming violence isn't murder. It's a consequence. I want to go home, she says, her voice quiet. Lucian nods. Let's go home. The return to the mansion feels different this time, lighter, a sign that she has finally accepted her place in this violent gilded cage. While the operative Chen performs his electronic exorcism, sweeping the house for listening devices, the staff moves about with a placid ignorance of the war that was nearly waged in their halls. In her room, Alana peels off her tactical gear, every muscle screaming in protest. The gun is put away. She stares at her reflection, taking inventory of the new bruises blooming alongside the old scars. A roadmap of her journey here. Lucian appears in the doorway, the blood-stained shirt gone. You should rest. Should. Won't. She turns to him. It's really over. He offers a truth that is its own kind of threat. This part is, but there will always be another war. Always. He closes the space between them, his hands finding her waist. This life doesn't get easier, Elena. It just gets bloodier, riskier. Are you absolutely sure this is what you want? It's one last test. She looks inside herself, weighing the terror and the violence against the strange sense of belonging she's found. She once tried to run from this world. Now she chooses to own it. I'm sure, she says, her voice steady. Not because it's easy or safe, but because it's mine, my choice, my life, and because I have you. This is the moment of alchemy, where she transforms the trauma that binds them into an act of free will. You have me, he agrees. For better or worse, let's be honest, probably for worse. I'll take worse, she breathes. Worse is what makes it interesting. He kisses her then, long and deep, and for her it feels like an ending. The bond is sealed. She is finally completely one of them. The numbers scream disaster, a labyrinth of risk, with every path leading toward a statistical certainty of ruin. But in the quiet calculus of the soul, it was the only way through. As if pulled by a force he couldn't name, Lucian closed the space between them, resting his forehead on hers. The world fell away. Tomorrow we face the council. He murmured, his voice a low vibration against her skin. They'll want a full accounting on Michael, the surveillance, all of it. You have to be there. She nodded. And after? He asked, the real question hanging in the air. After. We begin again on our own terms, together. Together. The word felt foreign on his tongue, a concept his world had never allowed. I think I could learn to like the sound of that. A ghost of a smile touched Elena's lips, a silent pact. I agree. Outside, the city hummed its indifferent rhythm, unaware of the predator, Thomas Reeves, still stalking its shadows. For the Romanos, father and son, a terrible reckoning was gathering on the horizon. The entire architecture of their world was shifting, all because Elena Varley was no longer a protected piece on the board. She was the hand that moved them. She had proven her worth in blood and strategy, carving out her own place in the hierarchy. For the first time, a sense of quiet settled in her, a feeling of absolute alignment. Here, inside the belly of the beast, she was building a new world with the man she had chosen. A world so much better than the one she'd tried to escape. This was not a cage. It was home. The council chamber no longer felt like a place of judgment. Elena walked through its doors with a new kind of gravity, the old anxieties a shed skin. Lucian was at her side, not as a guardian, but as an equal. Her seat at the main table, a place of power, not of exhibition, was met with a silent, grudging acceptance. At its head sat Dominic, her father, looking stronger than he had in weeks. The deep gash on his face had healed into a faint silver scar. Marco, his ever-watchful lieutenant, stood behind him, arms folded across his chest. A human shield, his eyes methodically scanning the room for threats, a reflex born from a trauma that never truly fades. The other heads of the families were there. Santos came in first, giving Elena a nod that was more than a greeting. It was a clear acknowledgement of her ascension. Castellano followed, a mask of profound irritation failing to hide the fact that he knew he had to be here. Moretti was there too, his gaze deliberately fixed on the far wall, a petty, silent protest. "Let us begin." Dominic's voice cut through the tension once they were all seated. "We have much to discuss." The first hour was a litany of procedure, of updates on the Romano problem. Both the father and son were now caged in a secure location, their fate hanging on the council's word. The son, Michael, had apparently sung, trading his father's entire conspiracy for a chance at a lesser hell. The confession was a masterpiece of betrayal, giving them everything they needed to tear down the last pillars of the Romano family's empire. The real question, Santos cut in, his voice smooth, is what becomes of their assets, the port, their political leverage, the whole machine they built over 30 years. It can't just vanish. "It will be divided," Castellano shot back, his greed immediate and undisguised. "Prorated, based on what this war cost us. My family lost 2 men. That has a price." "We all lost men," Marco countered, his tone sharp. "And trying to put a number on bodies is a fool's game." "Then what do you propose?" Elena had been a ghost in the room, watching, listening, mapping the currents of ambition and fear. Now her voice, clear and calm, broke the surface. "We don't divide it. We absorb it." The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Every pair of eyes in that chamber swiveled to fix on her. "Explain," Dominic commanded, his voice flat. The Romano network worked because it was a single living thing. The port fed the trucks funded the politicians, and the politicians protected the port. If you cut it into pieces, you kill it. But if you keep it whole and run it as one. She let the idea sink into the thick air. "You're talking about a consortium," Santos said, the gears already turning in his mind. "Shared control of everything the Romanos owned." "I'm talking about an end to this endless circular game of fighting over scraps. I'm proposing a coalition. Our true strength is together. Romano proved that. He almost wiped us all out because we were too busy guarding our own little kingdoms to see the wolf at the door." Moretti let out a short, sharp laugh, a sound of pure contempt. "That's a child's dream. Alliances like that don't last. Someone always gets greedy. Betrayal isn't a risk, it's an inevitability." "Just as Romano proved," Elena fired back, her eyes locking with his. "You're right. Greed is always a factor, but that's a sickness born of a sick system. Imagine a different one. A system with transparent rules, with books that anyone can see, and with penalties for betrayal that we all agree on before it happens." "You're describing a corporation," Castellano sneered, the word meant as an insult. "I'm describing how we survive. The world is changing. The police are getting smarter. Technology is making it impossible to hide, and every year there will be another Romano, someone who sees our infighting and decides to burn the whole house down." Elena leaned forward, her presence filling the space. "We either evolve or we die. There is no third option. A slow, deliberate nod began from Santos. She's not wrong. I've been saying for years the old ways are failing us. Maybe it's time to try something new. And you'd trust these men to keep their word? Moretti scoffed, waving a hand at the others. Castellano would sell his own mother for a bigger piece of the pie. The Varlis are only pushing this to grab more power for themselves. The Varlis are pushing this. Dominic's voice was ice. Because my daughter was nearly put in the ground, stopping Romano. And because she is right, we have been running on ego and tradition, while the ground crumbles beneath our feet. And frankly, I have no more patience for it. The fragile peace of the room shattered. Castellano and Moretti were on their feet, shouting. Santos was trying to play peacemaker. Others just added to the noise. Elena watched the chaos unfold, seeing with perfect clarity the fractures Romano had so easily exploited. They didn't trust each other. They could barely stand to be in the same room. It was their fatal flaw. Beneath the table, Lucian's hand found hers, a silent, grounding pressure. Enough! Her father's voice was a whip crack, honed by years of command. This isn't getting decided today, but it will be considered. Elena will draft a formal proposal. The structure, the profit shares, the consequences. Every last detail. We will meet again in 2 weeks to review it. 2 weeks? Moretti sputtered. That's impossible. Then she'd better be efficient. This meeting is over. The family heads filed out, some still arguing, others already lost in cold calculation. Santos stopped by Elena's chair. To propose something so radical, that took a great deal of courage. Or it was just reckless, she answered, her voice quiet. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. He offered a thin smile. For what it's worth, I agree with the diagnosis. We need to change. The only question is whether these old dogs can learn any new tricks. After he left, Elena sat alone in the cavernous room, the sheer scale of what she'd just done settling on her like a shroud. To rebuild their world from the ground up. To build it on trust, a thing that didn't exist here, and on cooperation, a concept utterly alien to their very nature. You see the probability of failure here, don't you? Lucian's voice is low. It's immense. Every clause will be a battleground. Moretti will work to burn it all down from the inside. Castellano will bleed you dry with his manipulations. Even the ones who nod their heads now will freeze when they see what they're truly being asked to sign away. I see it. Then tell me the point of this. Elena finally turns to him, her eyes catching the low light. Because something has to break the cycle, to keep living the same nightmare and pray for a different ending. That's the very definition of madness, isn't it? She pauses, searching for the words. I'm not trying to survive until the next Romano rises from the ashes. I'm trying to build something that lasts, something better. For a long moment, Lucian just watches her. And you truly believe you can? I have to. If I don't, then none of this has any meaning. He steps into her space, closing the distance, and presses a soft, reassuring kiss to her forehead. Then I'll back the play, he says quietly, even if it's destined to go down in flames. That's the spirit. For the next week, Elena works herself to the bone, a blur of motion fueled by 18-hour days. She dives deep into the Romano Empire's guts, tracing every artery of power, speaking in hushed tones with lawyers and financiers who live in the shadows of the law. Marco slides folders, thick with intelligence, across her desk. Her father provides the ghosts of history. Even Santos offers his own, unasked-for perspective. Lucian is her constant shadow, a whetstone against which she sharpens her ideas, staying with her until the sky begins to lighten, relentlessly prodding at her logic until every single piece of her plan could withstand a siege. It was brutal. It was exhausting. It was exactly what she needed. This formula for profit sharing is going to be impossible to enforce, he murmurs, his finger tracing a line on her latest draft. I know, but if we base it purely on contribution, Castellano will cook the books. If we make it an equal split, Moretti will scream that he's carrying everyone else's weight. So you picked a spot in the middle, and you're praying they're not angry enough to walk away. That sums it up. Lucian pushes the papers away. The work is solid, Elena. Brilliant. Even, but you know they'll tear it to shreds just for the sport of it. Let them. It gives us a place to start. The second council meeting was somehow even more venomous than the first. Moretti rejected the profit model out of hand. Castellano began his power play for control of their muscle. Santos agreed with the shape of it, but wanted to rework the entire chain of command. And that was just the opening salvo. For 3 punishing hours, they picked her proposal apart, challenging every word, questioning every motive. Elena held her ground. She was a fortress, defending the plan, sacrificing a pawn here and there, but never wavering on the core of it. Lucian was a silent pillar of support at her side. Her father even stepped in, his voice a low growl, reminding them all that the only other option was to remain fractured and weak. This is all beautifully naive, Moretti sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. But what happens when the ink is dry and someone breaks the rules? When one of us puts their own family first? Then we enforce the consequences. All of us. Elena slid another file onto the polished table. The sound was a dull thud in the tense silence. This lays out the entire process for settling scores. A neutral party to arbitrate, escalating fines for breaking the rules, and, as a last resort, collective action against the family that steps out of line. The unspoken threat hung in the air. Civil war. I'm saying we hold each other to the fire. Yes, it could lead to a fight. But a controlled burn, with rules of engagement, is a hell of a lot better than the chaos we have now. Castellano leaned forward, sniffing for a weakness. And who decides what's a last resort? Who makes that final call? We do, she said, her gaze sweeping the room. A majority vote of this council, and the accused doesn't get a say. No one man will ever hold that power. The questions kept coming, each one a dagger aimed at a potential flaw. Elena parried every single one, her resolve seeming to harden with every attack, feeding on the strength of her own creation. It wasn't perfect. A system built to contain this many narcissists could never be, but its bones were strong. Finally, Dominic called for the vote. All in favor of putting this framework into play on a trial basis? Santos raised his hand without a moment's hesitation. A breath. Then 2 more hands went up, followed by another. Moretti and Castellano did not vote against it. They abstained. A world of difference. The motion passed. Elena felt a tension she'd held for weeks finally drain from her body. It wasn't relief. The real stress was just beginning, but it was a kind of vindication, a confirmation that her mind could do more than just dodge bullets and sniff out traps. Congratulations are in order, Santos said after the room had cleared. You just rewired the entire city. How does it feel? He asked. Terrifying, Elena admitted without shame. Good. Stay terrified. It'll keep you sharp. That night, the family gathered for dinner. It was loose, informal, a world away from the rigid ceremony she'd grown up with. Her father was there, Lucian, Marco, and a handful of old soldiers who had bled for the family long enough to earn a seat at the table. Dominic lifted his glass. To Elena, who did in a month what we couldn't manage in decades. I had help, she deflected. You had tools. What you built with them was all you. He smiled, and in it was a pure, paternal pride she realized she had been starving for. Your mother would have been so proud. The words hit her with the force of a physical blow, an emotional tidal wave she never saw coming. She lifted her own glass, fighting the sudden burn in her eyes. To family, the one you're born with and the one you choose. They drank. For the very first time, Elena felt like she truly belonged, not as an asset to be guarded, but as an equal, someone who had earned her place not by blood, but by merit. Later, after most had gone, Lucian found her, the balcony overlooking the gardens, the very same spot where, only weeks ago, she had plotted her escape from this life. Thinking of running away? He asked, his voice soft beside her, reading her mind with unnerving accuracy. No, just remembering that I wanted to. She leaned back against him as he wrapped his arms around her waist. It feels like another lifetime. And in a way, it was. You've changed. For better or for worse. For real. The Elena who wanted to run was driven by fear, by the feeling of a cage closing in, looking for any way out. This Elena, he continued, turning her gently to face him. She walks into a room and changes its gravity. She faces down men twice her age and makes them bend. She tears down power structures that have stood for generations and builds something new from the rubble. This Elena also gets shot and nearly bleeds to death on a semi-regular basis. A detail, he conceded with a faint smile. Nobody's perfect. He leaned in then, and the kiss was long and deep, a silent testament. But you're perfect for me. Elena pulled back just enough to look him in the eyes. So, what now? Romano is gone, the families are in line, the crisis is over. What happens next? We build, we protect what we've built, and we wait for the next threat, because there is always a next threat. His whole body went still, his expression turning deadly serious. And we have to name this thing between us. His voice was low. I was under the impression we already had. We have affection, a partnership that works, yes, but there are practicalities, living arrangements, the collision of our private lives, and this life and weather. He trailed off, the words lost. Whether what? Whether the future you want is the one I see. Elena felt a sudden thunder in her chest, a frantic beat against her ribs. And what future is that? One where you are more than my partner, where this, he gestured to the space separating them, becomes permanent, irrevocable. She watched him, the silence stretching. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I am asking if you would ever consider it. Someday, when the world stops spinning. He looked anxious, a jarring sight for a man who faced down death with a look of boredom. I know about the complications, this world, what's expected. all of it. But I needed you to know where my heart is, because if you aren't there, if that's not a place you ever want to be. Elena silenced his nervous spiral with a kiss. Yes. Just one word. Yes, I would consider it. Yes, I want that future. Yes to all of it. The shock on his face was almost comical. You truly thought I'd say no? I theorized you might need time to be sure. Lucienne, I've been sure about you since I was 18. Everything before this was just me, waiting in the wings, for you to finally see me standing there. He kissed her again, harder this time, and Elena felt the last pieces of the girl she used to be turn to dust. The girl who wanted to run, who saw her life as a gilded cage. She no longer existed. In her place stood someone else, harder, surer, more herself than she had ever been. The next morning, the buzz of her phone pulled Elena from her sleep. An unknown number. We need to meet. I have significant intel on Reeves. Come alone. An address followed. She read the message again, every instinct screaming that it was a setup. Thomas Reeves had evaporated after Michael's arrest, a ghost in the system. There had been no whispers, no signs of life, until now. Logic dictated the path. Tell Lucienne, take backup, control the scene. But the meet was a coffee shop, bustling and public, an illusion of safety, and the message was clear. Alone. The choice was made. 40 minutes later, she walked into the cafe, every nerve ending alive, searching for the thing that was out of place. It was the morning rush, a sea of people grabbing their caffeine fix, no obvious threats, no one who looked like muscle. And then she saw him. Thomas Reeves tucked into a corner booth, looking like a shadow of the man she remembered. He was pale, exhausted, with the hollowed-out eyes of a man who has already made peace with his own death and is just waiting for the final curtain. Elena slid into the seat across from him. You have a hell of a lot of nerve contacting me. I know, but I had to. He slid a flash drive across the Formica tabletop. Everything I ever did for Romano, every contact, every back door, it's all on here. Why? Because they're going to kill me anyway. Romano's people will kill me for failing. Our people will kill me for the betrayal. This way, maybe my death can follow one decent act. Elena studied him, seeing nothing but raw fear and a regret that ate him from the inside out. You took $200,000 to sell out people who trusted you. Men died because of what you did. I know. His voice cracked. I needed the money. Medical bills. My daughter. She's sick and the insurance wouldn't. He stopped, as if hearing how weak the excuse sounded. It doesn't justify it. I know. But this is me trying to make it right. With the flash drive? You think that fixes this? No, nothing can fix this. But maybe it'll stop the next guy from making the same choices I did. Maybe it'll give the family better protection than I ever could. He stood, leaving the small piece of plastic on the table between them. I'm sorry, Miss Varelli, for what it's worth. And then he was gone before Elena could even think of what to say. She sat there, staring at the drive, the tactical options spinning in her mind. Follow him, call Lucienne, or grab the intel and disappear. She snatched the drive and walked out. Back at the house, she plugged it into a clean laptop, a ghost machine with no network connection. The contents were a revelation. Blueprints of their security, comms logs, ledgers, everything Reeves promised and more. There was intel on other weak points, notes on how to fix them, even a list of other IT guys who could be turned. It was a confession and a battle plan all in one. You went alone. Lucien's voice coming from the doorway was like a blade, edged with a fury he was struggling to conceal. After everything that's happened, you chose to meet a known traitor. By yourself. Elena had known this was coming. It was a public place. The risk was low. There's no such thing as low risk when you're dealing with a man who has already set fire to everything he's ever touched. He wanted to give us this. She shot back, nodding at the laptop screen. Intel we never would have gotten any other way. And yes, I made a call. That's part of the job now. Your job isn't to be reckless. I wasn't reckless. I was strategic. There's a difference. She stood up to face him. You're going to have to get used to the fact that I make my own calls now, even the ones you don't like. Even when they put you in the line of fire. Especially then. That's what this life is. It's nothing but danger and risk and making choices when there are no good options. You've been doing it for years. Now it's my turn. He looked tormented, dragging a hand through his dark hair. I just got you back. I'm not ready to lose you. You're not losing me. You're just meeting the new me. She reached out, her hands finding his. I need you to trust me the way I've always trusted you. I need you to believe that I can handle myself, even when the thought of it terrifies you. It's a constant state of terror. Good, stay scared. It'll keep you sharp. A small smile played on her lips as she threw his own words back at him. Now come look at what Reeves gave us. It's surprisingly thorough. For the next hour, they tore the files apart, sifting through the data, organizing the intelligence. Reeves hadn't just confessed, he'd drawn them a map of their own crumbling kingdom, pointing out every crack in the foundation and explaining exactly how to patch it. It was the last testament of a man begging for an absolution he knew would never come. So what happens to him? Elena finally broke the silence. Reeves? He's a dead man walking. What's the protocol? His thoughts were a battlefield. He betrayed us. People died. By all our laws, he should be put down like a dog. She kept her eyes locked on the screen. And yet he's trying to undo the damage. He handed us the keys to our own survival. You're actually thinking about letting him live. There are other ways than a body bag. I am thinking. We could give him exile. We strip him of everything he has ever known, piece by piece. Make it impossible for him to ever touch this life again. But we let him live with his child. Lucian weighed the words. The council will tear this apart. They'll want blood. Then we don't tell the council. We say he vanished, presumed dead. It's over. That is mercy, Elena. This world wasn't built on mercy. Maybe it's time it was. Her eyes were locked on his, unblinking. I'm not suggesting we forgive him. I'm suggesting we choose not to be the ones who add another corpse to the count. That just this once we break the goddamn cycle. A long, heavy silence stretched between them before Lucian gave a single, sharp nod. Done. We do it your way. But if he so much as casts a shadow in our direction again, if he becomes a whisper of a threat, we end it. For now, his sentence was to live with what he had done, a punishment all its own. The story went out like a shot in the dark. Reeves, found floating in the river. The council filed the report without a second glance. Another problem solved. And somewhere far away, Thomas Reeves was learning the shape of a new name, the crushing gravity of his choices a constant companion. Elena told herself mercy was a form of power, not a failing. But in the quiet hours of the night, she'd lie awake, staring into the darkness, haunted by the question of what she had done, if the ghost she'd let go would one day return to claim them all. Only time would tell. The weeks that followed were a blur of war room meetings and negotiations held at knife point. The new coalition formed slowly, each family testing the new boundaries, searching for the first sign of weakness. There were flare-ups, moments of pure tension, where the whole damn thing threatened to shatter. But Elena was the constant, a mediator, a fulcrum, the one force somehow holding the fragile architecture together. The Romano lands were folded into a collective trust. Every dollar of revenue was sliced according to the brutal calculus she had designed. And slowly, grudgingly, the families began to move in something that looked like unison. "You're actually making this work," Marco said one afternoon, his eyes on the latest ledger. "I honestly didn't think it was possible. It was barely possible it might still burn." Elena pressed her fingers to her temples, feeling the bone-deep exhaustion. "Castellano is already making noise about a bigger percentage. That's just him breathing." The fact that he's arguing numbers instead of seizing warehouses means the system is holding. These are the small victories. Elena was starting to think they were the only kind there were. In the heart of this storm, the bond with Lucian deepened. They took an apartment of their own, away from the main compound, but still inside its walls. Their sanctuary, a place to breathe away from the relentless pressure of their world. They learned the small rhythms of a life lived together. Elena discovered Lucian was religious about his coffee and a complete disaster in the kitchen. He learned that she needed absolute silence to think and kept a secret hoard of antique books. They fought over strategy, over what constituted an acceptable risk, over the shape of future. But they also found moments of quiet, talked about what could be, and began to build something that felt like it might actually last. One night, lying in the dark after a council meeting had disintegrated into a shouting match, Elena finally gave voice to the question that was eating her alive. "Do you think any of this is real? Any of it?" "What do you mean?" "All of it. The coalition, this new order, this attempt to build something that isn't just about who survives. Are we actually changing anything, or are we just rearranging the bars on the same cage?" Lucian was quiet for a long time. "I think we're planting seeds. Whether they grow into something better or just different, we won't know for years." "That's not very reassuring." "It's the truth." He pulled her closer. "But I know this. Before you, this family was dying. Surviving, maybe, but going nowhere. You have taken apart every rule, challenged every belief, and you have forced us to evolve. That matters." "Even if this all goes to hell, even then, because we tried something else. We didn't just lie down and accept that this is how it has to be." Elena's mind flashed to her mother, who died fighting for a different ending. To her father, who spent his life hiding her from this world instead of arming her for it. To all the ghosts who came before, fighting and dying in the same endless circle. Maybe they were finally breaking it, or maybe they were just building a new one. Whatever it was, they were in it together. "I love you," she whispered, the words still feeling strange and powerful on her tongue. "I love you too, even when you're being a reckless lunatic and giving me heart failure. Especially then." He let out a low chuckle, and Elena felt a month of coiled tension release from her shoulders. Tomorrow would bring another cascade of impossible choices, another set of shadows trying to undo everything they were building. But tonight, in this room, the world was still. She had stopped running, stopped hiding from what she was. And by walking straight into the heart of the darkness, she had found things she never expected. Light, a reason, a home. The empire they were forging was a broken thing, a chaotic, violent machine held together by little more than her will and his vigilance. But it was theirs, and that changed everything. 6 months after the coalition began, Elena stood before a massive map of the city. Its surface, a constellation of colored pins marking territory, assets, and fragile new truces. What had been a desperate gamble was hardening into a reality. It wasn't perfect, far from it. Fights still broke out, old hatred still threatened to poison everything. But it was working, growing. The Santos family is pushing for the northern distribution routes, Marco said, reading from a list. They claim the population shift warrants a larger piece of the territory. And the data? Elena asked, her gaze fixed on the map. They have a point. The northern burbs are up 30% in 2 years, but giving them that corridor puts them in direct conflict with the Moretti warehouses. Then they don't get the route. We force a partnership with Moretti. They split the territory. They split the profits. Both families get to feed on the growth. Marco made a note. Moretti will be furious. Moretti's natural state is furious. He'll get over it. Elena finally turned from the map. What's next? The usual. Castellano is crying about his margins again. 2 families are fighting over a property line, and we have intel. New players trying to set up shop in the east. Define new players. Are they competition or a threat? Too soon to tell, but they have money, they have discipline, and they're asking a lot of questions about how we operate. Elena felt that old, familiar coldness prickle her skin. 6 months of quiet had made her soft. Too soft. Put a team on them. I want a complete picture. Who they are, who they answer to, and what they want, before they become a real problem. Already done. Lucian's handling it himself. Of course he was. Lucian had poured all of his terrifying focus into being the coalition's shield. Elena knew he was still finding his footing in this new world, still learning to solve problems with contracts instead of bullets. It wasn't easy for him. Some nights she'd find him just standing at the window, his eyes sweeping the city as if he expected an army to pour over the horizon. But he was trying. They both were. Is that everything? Elena asked. Your father wants to see you. He said it was important. She found Dominic in his study, barricaded behind the usual walls of paper. But something was different. He looked tired in a way sleep couldn't fix, a deep weariness etched into his bones. You wanted to see me? She asked, taking the chair opposite his desk. I've been thinking about succession, he said, skipping the preamble entirely. A knot tightened in Elena's gut. Dad, don't. Let me finish. I'm not dying. But I'm not getting any younger either. What happened with Romano, it made me face certain realities. He put down his pen. I built this family, this life. But what you've done in 6 months, this coalition, these truces, this whole new way of doing things, I could have never imagined it, let alone achieved it. That's not right. The foundation, that was your world. I built it for a time that is already dead. You are building for the world that's clawing its way into the light. It feels correct that I should step out of the way and let you build without my shadow falling over every stone. The words hit Elena like a physical force. You're retiring, transitioning. I'll still be here for advice, for anything you need. But the day-to-day, the grand strategy, the entire future of this family, that falls to you now, and to Lucian. You've earned it. A knot formed in Elena's throat, the body's visceral reaction to the crushing weight of a crown being passed. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep building. Say you'll give all of this a point beyond just staying alive. A smile touched Dominic's lips, a heartbreaking masterpiece of warmth, sorrow, and searing pride. Your mother would be so proud of you. My one regret is that she isn't here to see the woman you've become. I know that regret well. A quiet settled between them, a space where the silence was louder than words, articulating everything that could not be said. The room felt heavy, saturated with the ghosts of past decisions and the crushing gravity of the future. At last Dominic stood. He moved to a safe hidden behind a forgettable painting, an almost comical cliché, and pulled a small box out for Elena. This was your mother's. She wanted you to have it when you were ready. Inside lay a ring, a single, simple diamond that Elena knew from old photographs. It had been a permanent fixture on her mother's hand. She told me once this ring was about a choice, Dominic said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. She had a chance to get out, to leave your father and this whole ugly life behind. But she stayed. She chose to fight for something she believed was worth the cost. His eyes found Elena's, locking on them. You've made the same choice, and I think she would want you to know that. Elena slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. It had been waiting. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just promise me you'll be smarter than we were. That you'll build something that doesn't need to feed on violence to survive. I promise. Later, in the dark, she found Lucian bathed in the cold blue light of surveillance monitors. The moment he saw her, the hard lines of vigilance on his face dissolved into simple, personal concern. Are you okay? Marco said your father sent for you. He's stepping aside. He's giving it all to us. A profound stillness fell over Lucian, as if the world had stopped turning. It will be a slow transition over a few months. He wants to make it official at the next council meeting. Elena moved closer, holding out her hand so the light caught the ring. He gave me this. It was my mother's. Lucian took her hand, his thumb brushing over the cool metal of the artifact. It looks right on you. My father said she chose this life. She knew the cost, knew how insane it all was. She stayed because she thought the fight mattered. Elena looked up, meeting his gaze directly. I think about that, what's worth the price. I think what we're building. It isn't perfect and it isn't safe, but it means something. It could last longer than we do. She wove her fingers through his. My father asked me something else too. He asked if we'd ever thought about making what we have official. The stoic mask on Lucian's face finally cracked. Have we? You brought it up 6 months ago. You mentioned a future where I wasn't just your partner in crime. I remember you said eventually. I've been waiting for eventually. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. What if eventually is now? He stood, slow and deliberate, and framed her face with his hands. Is that you asking me or me asking you? Does it matter? Not even a little. He kissed her then, a kiss that was both soft and certain. Yes, to all of it, to us, to forever, to building this life, even knowing it's going to be complicated, dangerous, and a guaranteed disaster. Especially because of that, I don't want easy, Elena. I want real. I want you. She pulled him closer, a sense of profound alignment clicking into place deep inside her. This was the way. Terrifying, broken, and absolutely the way. The announcement came at the next council meeting. The reactions were a study in character. Santos offered a genuine smile of approval. Moretti looked like he'd just swallowed acid, while Castellano gave a slight shrug that said this was always how it would end. Critically, no one objected, which in their world was the same as a standing ovation. This changes the balance, Castellano noted, his voice flat. The Varelli family becomes much more powerful with the two of you at the head. It also stabilizes the leadership, Santos shot back. One clear line of succession, a unified front. That's good for all of us. As long as the power doesn't go to their heads. It won't, Elena said, her voice cutting through the tension. Because we're not trying to build an empire. We're trying to build something that lasts, a system that works for everyone, not just for us. The meeting then fell back into its usual rhythms. New crews pushing in from the east, territory squabbles, the divvying of profits. Elena and Lucian functioned as one, a single, seamless machine. They had found a rhythm in the past months, an unspoken language that told them when to push, when to give, when to be a wall of iron, and when to show a hint of the heart that beat behind it. It wasn't perfect. Fights still happened. Arguments over strategy were unavoidable, but they had learned how to have them, how to challenge each other without shattering the foundation of their partnership. After the meeting, as the room cleared out, Santos caught Elena's eye. You have a minute? They found a quiet corner. The usual easygoing look on Santos's face was gone, replaced by something grim. I have to warn you, he said, his voice low. Those new crews from the east, I've been digging. They're backed by outside money. Eastern European, Russian syndicates. This isn't just competition, Elena. This is a quiet, organized invasion. A deep, visceral cold spread through Elena's stomach. How sure are you about this intel? Sure enough that I'm not sleeping so well at night. They're buying property. They're recruiting on our turf. They're building infrastructure. These are the moves of a long-term, hostile takeover. Santos looked her dead in the eye. Your coalition is a beautiful idea, Elena, but it also painted a giant target on your back. By uniting the families, you made something valuable, and there are sharks in the water who see that prize as ripe for the taking. What's your advice? Harden your perimeter. The coalition is good for stopping fights on the inside, but you need a unified army to handle a threat from the outside. You needed it yesterday. Elena felt the familiar, crushing weight of her world settle back onto her shoulders. They had spent 6 months building a fragile peace, and now she might have to prepare them all for total war. I appreciate the intelligence, she said. I appreciate you bringing it to me. A lot of bosses wouldn't have. A ghost of a smile touched Santos's lips. You're good at this, you know? Better than most of us want to admit out loud. That night, Elena laid it all out for Lucian. They sat at their dining table, the glittering lights of the city sprawling beneath them like a fallen constellation, and they started to map out a war. Intel first, Lucian said, his voice hard. We have to confirm everything Santos said. We need names, numbers, capabilities. Agreed, but we also have to get the other families ready. If this is real, we can't face it alone. Some will push back. Moretti will call it a power grab. Castellano will want hard proof before he risks one man. Then we'll get him proof. We'll track every move, build a case so solid no one can deny it, and we will lay it at the council's feet. Elena rubbed her temples. This is exactly what I was afraid of. We build one thing that is stable, one thing that works, and the rest of the world lines up to knock it down. That's the nature of the world. The only thing that's changed is now we have something worth defending. Lucian reached across the table, his hand covering hers. We'll handle it. Together. For the next 3 weeks, intelligence was their only religion. Lucian's network confirmed every one of Santos's fears. The Eastern crew was real, it was well-funded, and it was systematically working its way into the city's bones. Their carelessness suggested a terrifying level of confidence, or maybe just pure arrogance. Elena called an emergency meeting. She laid it all out. The documents, the surveillance feeds, the money trails. A heavy silence settled over the room as the full weight of the truth landed on each of them. This is worse than Romano, Marco said, his voice flat and dead. Romano was a cancer inside us. This is an army on our doorstep. What do they want? Castellano asked. To burn us to the ground, Lucian answered. They plan to wipe us out, take our businesses, our turf, our networks. They see this alliance as a weakness. Too many cooks in the kitchen. They think we're ripe for the picking. Are we? Moretti's voice was a challenge. Only if we let them think that. Elena steps toward the tactical map. The move is a classic gambit, using an outside enemy to forge an empire from within. Her choice of words, surviving, is a deliberate strike at the most primal fear coiled in the hearts of the other family bosses. The arguments that follow are just noise. Moretti's complaints about money and Castellano's whining about control are just masks for the real unspoken conflict, the sheer terror of giving up their crowns to a new power, even if it's one of their own. We have a choice, she said, and the words sliced through the room's thick silence, a surgeon's ultimatum. We break apart, or we stand as one. She laid it bare before them, scatter and be hunted down alone, or face the coming storm together. When she added, then we lose together, she transformed the specter of failure from a solitary shame into a shared, tragic martyrdom, making the impossible risk somehow bearable. The vote that followed wasn't unity. It was the synchronized movement of men held together by sheer terror. The mobilization was a foregone conclusion, a surge of adrenaline, and steel answering an undeniable threat to their very existence. She fell into a state of waking nightmare, a 20-hour day fueled by the bitter taste of caffeine and the metallic tang of adrenaline. That the enemy anticipated every move, every feint, could only mean one thing. The calls were coming from inside the house. Her pivot from defense to offense was a seismic shift in her soul. It was the moment the prey, cornered and bleeding, decided to bare its teeth and become the predator, a desperate, violent attempt to impose her will on a world spiraling into chaos. Unveiling the plan to Lucian was like laying a lit match before a powder keg. His eyes registered the truth of it instantly, the raw aggression of the strategy, a first strike. She saw the flicker of his hesitation and leaned in, her voice a low murmur that reframed the act not as an attack, but as a shattering of the enemy's rhythm, forcing them onto their back foot. A complete reversal of the board. Brilliant, he breathed, the word a mix of awe and horror. Terrifying. When he asked where she had learned such things, she offered it back to him, a tribute to his own lessons, a quiet acknowledgement of the tangled, codependent thing that bound them together. The operation began 3 days later under a moonless sky. It was a symphony of coordinated strikes, not to annihilate, but to psychologically shatter the enemy. The goal was to unleash chaos, to make them flinch and reveal their weak points, to burn away their illusion that the coalition was easy prey. The blowback was immediate and brutal. An inferno. For 2 weeks, the city became a meat grinder, a hellscape of urban warfare. She lived in the shadowlands of exhaustion, a ghost managing the bloody fallout, her mind racing to find an exit that wasn't paved with the bodies of her people. Lucian owned the streets. She commanded the war from the shadows, a clean division of labor. When Santos's message arrived that the enemy wanted to talk, a strange and contradictory wave washed over her. First, a profound, bone-deep relief, then, an instant later, the icy grip of suspicion. The logic was simple, brutal. The enemy had miscalculated. They had expected a fractured mob and instead had run headlong into a disciplined, unified army. Their offer to divide the territory wasn't peace. It was a lie, a strategic gasp for air before the next round of killing began. This was their chance to rearm, to tend to the wounded, to prepare for the war that was surely coming. Santos's philosophy, better a draw than a knockout, was a bitter but honest admission of how much blood they had already lost. In the quiet of their command post, it was Lucian who gave voice to the grim reality. He spoke of the hollowed-out look in their soldiers' eyes, the sheer human cost of their fight, arguing for the truce as the only sane path forward. "It feels like quitting," she confessed, the words tasting like ash. He countered, his voice raw with exhaustion, insisting they could not build a future on a foundation of endless war. He admitted his change of heart was because of her, a stunning confession of emotional attachment that seemed to hang in the air between them. The negotiations were a 3-day exercise in cold-blooded theater. Elena, as the coalition's voice, sat across from Dmitri, the enemy commander. He was a pragmatic narcissist, a man who would listen to reason only if it lined his pockets. His acknowledgement of her impressive machine was not a compliment, but a peer's validation of her power. Their conversation was a clinical exchange of assets and threats. An agreement was drawn. The city was carved into long lines of cold logic, with protocols for every potential transgression. It was a piece as fragile as spun glass, held together only by mutual greed. "I'll take profit over principles," Dmitri declared, perfectly summarizing the rotten soul of their new arrangement. The signing was a sterile affair, a pantomime of legitimacy for observers. In her report to the council, Elena sold the stalemate as a victory, a masterful piece of political theater that bought them the 2 things they needed most: stability and time. The approval from her father was the final, critical piece of a puzzle she'd been solving her entire life. His words, "better than I could have," were a coronation, a transference of power that soothed an ancient ache deep within her soul. The engagement party was a small, hushed affair. It was less a celebration and more a sacred ritual to formalize the alliance between Elena and Lucian, cementing her authority through a union of the personal and the political. Even Moretti, a man carved from stone, seemed to radiate a genuine warmth. Santos's toast captured the beautiful, tragic irony of their world. A room full of killers and thieves raising their glasses to love. Her father's final words, delivered in private, were his blessing, drawing a line from his own 30-year partnership to hers. The exchange was a quiet absolution, granting her a peace she never thought she would find. "Thank you, Dad." After his last declaration of pride, the dam inside her finally broke. A complete emotional surrender that ended in a desperate, clinging embrace. The wedding, 3 months on, was a quiet, solemn event, a deliberate rejection of the gaudy displays of power their kind usually favored. The vows they spoke were not flowery promises, but a contract etched in steel. Lucian's words were a pledge of unwavering allegiance to her and their shared violent world. "I will always choose you," he swore, the only oath that could ever hold meaning in the hell they inhabited. "The same is promised," Elena answered, her voice steady. "And I promise to see your rationalizations, to force your growth, and to never allow us to grow complacent. I promise to be your partner in all things, in this bond, in our work, in building an empire that lasts." Their kiss wasn't an ending, it was a genesis, the violent, beautiful start of a reality that neither of them could have imagined a year before. The year that followed brought new kinds of war. Of course it did. The truce with Dmitri held, but it was a cold war, a game of constant, precarious balance. The coalition grew, swallowing other factions, its roots spreading into legitimate businesses. Elena and Lucian learned the dangerous dance of being partners and spouses, of knowing when to keep the war outside their door and when to let it bleed through. They fought, they reconciled, they made impossible choices that stole their sleep and celebrated victories made all the sweeter by the blood it cost to win them. Elena's role shifted from just managing her family to holding the entire coalition together. She was the diplomat, the strategist, the one person who could diffuse the simmering hatreds that always threatened to tear their world apart. It was an exhausting, extraordinary burden, the very role she had been unknowingly training for her entire life. Lucian became her sword and her shield, but he learned to fight with a new finesse, a psychological edge honed by her methods. He discovered that the threat of violence could be far more powerful than the act itself. Not that the coiled lethality ever left his eyes. It was always there, a promise that compelled obedience. Together, they rebuilt the family enterprise for a future beyond mere survival. They funneled money into legal entities, started education funds for the children, and created pathways for their people to get out of the life. "You're changing the entire game," Marco told her one day, his voice full of wonder, "making it about more than just staying alive." "Is that a liability?" she asked. "No, it's just different, revolutionary," he said, a slow grin spreading across his face. "Your mother would be so proud." The thought of her mother was a constant, solid presence for Elena, the woman who chose this world, who bled for it, who died in it. Elena wore her ring every single day, a constant reminder that choice was everything. She could have run, but she stayed. She took the broken things she had inherited and decided to make it whole. 18 months had passed in the quiet rhythm of consolidation. On an evening thick with silence, Lucian finally gave voice to the question that had shadowed their every move. "What is our next objective?" His words cut the stillness. Across the room, Elena's gaze lifted from a page of sterile numbers. "Define the question." "The coalition is stable. Dmitri is a ghost. The family holdings have been reshaped." He pushed his own papers aside, the gesture final. We've met every goal. But for what endgame? What is it we actually want beyond this constant state of vigilance? The question hung between them, a dangerous, fragile thing. They had lived for so long in the trenches of survival, so fixated on extinguishing fires that they had never drawn a map for peace. I want to grow the legitimate assets, Elena said, the words taking shape as they left her lips, slow and deliberate. Her purpose, once spoken, was absolute: to erect an enterprise so vast it would one day allow them to sever all ties to the shadows. It wouldn't be immediate, maybe not even in their lifetime. A generation, perhaps two. She knew. But that was the shape of the vision: to forge an institution that would outlive them, giving their children choices they were never granted. Her eyes found his, unwavering. And I want a family, children who can decide who they are, not be born into this. A long, drawn-out silence fell over Lucian. I have never truly considered children. The thought was a luxury I never permitted myself because, frankly, I never expected to live long enough for it to matter. And now it is all I can think about. The man I would be as a father, the broken world we would drag them into, the morality of forcing that existence upon another soul. My mother did. Your mother did. And look at the wreckage we became. A pause stretched. Elena's voice was low. All right, we are, by any objective measure, a catastrophe. A short, sharp laugh escaped him. We are high-functioning catastrophes. Surely that counts for something. We can give them a better world. We can build a foundation that won't fracture beneath their feet. Give them the choices we bled for. You're certain this is the path? I am fatally serious about this. With you, a life that is more than just breathing until the next dawn. Lucian drew her into him, and for Elena, every discordant piece of their world fell into place. This was the true objective. They weren't just securing a business. They were birthing a dynasty, an entity beyond currency and power. 6 months later, the intelligence came in. Elena was pregnant. The families reacted with a mix of shock and calculation, but the verdict was ultimately one of support. An heir meant stability. It meant the continuation of a bloodline, a chance that the fortress they had constructed might actually stand the test of time. You are going to be utterly unbearable for the next 9 months, Lucian murmured against her hair, already knowing she would cede no ground, picturing her directing council meetings from a hospital bed. My conduct is not so severe. It is 100%. And it's one of the things about you I find most captivating. His prediction proved flawless. Elena, of course, surrendered none of her authority throughout the pregnancy, commanding the coalition while simultaneously pushing their legitimate ventures forward. She created trust funds for the children of men lost in the war against Dimitri's faction. She funded training programs and scholarships. She was laying the steel and concrete of a world that looked nothing like the one she had clawed her way out of. And then their daughter was born, small, flawless. She had Lucian's night dark hair and a perfect, tiny replica of Elena's own stubborn frown. In that instant, the world sharpened to a single point. She is magnificent, Dominic breathed, cradling his granddaughter as if she were made of spun moonlight and myth. What is her name? Isabella, Elena told him. For my mother. Tears welled in her father's eyes, bright and sudden. She would have been so impossibly proud. Holding Isabella, feeling the infinitesimal, crushing weight of a life that was now theirs to defend, Elena finally understood her mother's madness. That burning need to fight, to tear down the world, to build something worth dying for. Because now in her arms, Elena held something worth living for, something worth burning the old world down to protect. We're going to build a better world for her, she whispered to Lucian in the dead of night, the city lights a distant galaxy below as they watched their daughter sleep. All of this, damage in us, the violence, the risk, we'll turn it into a weapon to forge her a future. We will, Lucian vowed, his voice a low promise in the dark, if it takes the rest of our lives. The years that followed were an exercise in clinical precision, a constant balancing of impossible variables. Elena and Lucian raised Isabella in the heart of a criminal empire, navigating threats while brokering truces, honoring a bloody past while hurtling toward an unrecognizable future. The coalition grew. Other families swore allegiance, drawn to the stability and a model of profit that wasn't built on pure predation. Their legitimate businesses swelled until their revenues eclipsed the income from every illicit operation combined. Then, with methodical deliberation, they began the turn. They weren't cutting the roots, not completely, but they were building an edifice that could survive the light of day. The process was anything but clean. There were failures, betrayals, moments the entire structure groaned, threatening to collapse into dust. But the foundation held. It was built on the unfamiliar mortar of trust and mutual gain, not just the old bedrock of fear. 5 years from the day she first spoke her vision into life, Elena stood again in the same council chamber. She watched the faces now etched with lines of shared history. Some were gone. Moretti was finally retired, his seat filled by a son with a more modern view. New banners hung on the walls. The very air in the room was different, but the core of it, that remained. A room of killers and thieves who had discovered, with no small amount of reluctance, that building together was infinitely more profitable than tearing each other apart. I have an announcement, Dominic said, his voice carrying the weight of an advisor now, not a king. The Varelli family is officially pivoting the bulk of its operations to the legitimate sector. Our commitments to this body will be honored, but our primary focus is now the creation of a lasting enterprise for the next generation. The room fractured into sound. Some were ready. They could read the writing on the wall of the outside world. Others bristled, their identities too deeply entrenched in the old ways. But no one could argue with the numbers. This is the next evolution, Elena declared, her voice slicing through the noise once it subsided. Not just for us, for all of you. We can keep to the old cycles, endless wars for territory, living one misstep away from a federal indictment. Or we can build something real, something our children can point to with pride, instead of something they have to escape. And what of those who don't wish to change? Castellano shot back, his voice a low challenge. Then you don't have to. This coalition was never about forcing one doctrine. It's about giving us all the strength of options, whether you're building a corporation or running the old games. Elena's eyes met his, cold and steady. But I would think very hard about the kind of legacy you want to leave behind, what you want to remain after you're just a name on a stone. The vote that cemented the Varelli future was decisive, and in that quiet moment of victory, The future Elena had fought for materialized in her mind. A tangible reality, a place where her mother's long war had finally yielded something more than just survival. Later, she finds Lucian on a balcony overlooking the sprawling city, a tapestry of electric light. The years had marked him, the faint lines around his eyes. But the core of the man who had once confessed a life's obsession was unchanged. "We did it," she said, her voice soft as she came up behind him, her arms circling his waist. He asked, "Did what?" And she clarified, "We built something that matters, a fundamental shift in the landscape of our world." His deflection was immediate, familiar. "You built it. I just tried to stay out of the way." She countered, "It was a joint venture. It's the blueprint for everything we do." She rested her head against his shoulder, the gesture an easy, practiced intimacy. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Choosing this life with me instead of a normal one?" His answer came without a breath of hesitation. "Every single day." He let her feel the shock of it before turning, his expression softening as he explained the calculated cruelty. "I regret the danger, the fear every time I thought I was about to lose you. That's what I regret. But us, never, not for a second." Her reply was a quiet affirmation. "Good, because I don't either." They stood there in the silence, watching over their kingdom. The system they had forged was far from perfect. It was a breathing, scarred thing, still bearing the ghosts of its violent birth. But it held the seeds of hope, of change, built on something stronger than fear. And in another room, Isabella slept, dreaming her childish dreams, utterly unaware of the weight of the legacy being built around her. This child, she thinks, will grow up with a universe of choices that she never had. The freedom to walk away from this world or to conquer it, to innovate or to honor tradition. This, Elena knows, is the only goal that matters. Not perfection, just possibility. The aim was never to escape the darkness, but to bend that darkness into a structure that could, against all odds, support light. She had walked directly into the fire she'd spent her life running from, and in its heat, she had forged everything she ever needed: love, purpose, a place to belong, a partnership that made her more, not less, of herself, a life defined by more than just a pulse. "What are you thinking about?" Lucian asks, his voice soft in the quiet. "That I was wrong about so many things, about what strength is, what love requires, what makes a war worth fighting." She turns her body to face him fully. "But I was right about you, about us." He leans in and kisses her, a confirmation that needs no words, and Elena feels the truth of it settled deep in her bones. This was it. The life her mother chose, the life she had just claimed for her own. A choice made not for ease or for safety, but because some things are worth the blood it costs to build them. They had created a foundation of trust and sheer will in a world built on fear. It was a fragile, insane gamble that power didn't have to corrupt, that love could survive in the line of fire, and that people could fundamentally change if you gave them a reason to. This was nothing like the stories she'd been told as a child. It was better. It was real and flawed, and she had fought for every inch of it. It made every questionable choice that led them to this single moment worth it. In a world of control, they had created an exception. Just two people refusing to let go of who they were or what they had built, reaffirming their choice in each other every single day, especially when the guns were out. They were living proof that love could share a heart with power, that tenderness could exist alongside brutality, that hope could somehow bloom in the harshest reality. They had taken their dark world and shaped it into something that could actually nurture life. In doing so, they found more than a way to survive. They found a reason. This wasn't just an empire, it was a home. The city sprawled before them, a map of infinite promise and endless peril. But the knot of anxiety that had lived in Elena's chest for so long was finally gone. She had learned the hardest lesson. The bravest thing you can do isn't to run from the monster. It's to stand your ground. Your hand in the hand of the one person who sees every broken piece of you and loves you anyway. She had built an empire, yes. But more importantly, she had built a life, a meaningful life with him, a bond strong enough to hold back the dark, and that was worth more than anything.